Chapter 491. Uncle Jack's Ability. With his supreme skill, Michael saw the extreme difference in mana quantity in the air. It was just as Uncle Jack said. The dragon's fire breath burned through even mana itself. This is his ability? Michael wondered. Ha ha ha. That is not the extent of my ability. With the power given to me by the heavens itself, I can summon a rock from the skies that will obliterate you into nothing but smithereens. Michael looked up and saw that within the endless blue skies, there was now a large meteor crashing towards the earth at insane speeds, enough to ignite itself and leave a trail of fire behind it. Judging from its speed, it would take less than 2 minutes before the meteor crash landed into the sanctum and reduced everything into a large crater. The green dragon then walked up to Michael, with its footsteps creating large reverberations throughout the entirety of the sanctum. It turned around and waved its tail among the tall corn stalks, hoping to find Michael somewhere within. Come on. I don't want to hurt you any more than I should. Surrender now before you feel the wrath of my ability. Michael teleported himself away just in time as the dragon's limb trudged through the cornfield. It thrashed its large body and breathed fire any time that it could to try and find Michael, who seemed to disappear at the very last second. As he dodged, Michael took this time to observe the dragon. He didn't know why, but he felt like there was something wrong with it. The first thing was that he didn't understand what kind of ability Uncle Jack had. Usually, abilities controlled or bent some kind of reality to conform to their powers. However, it usually required some kind of caveat or condition before it could activate. He needed raw materials for the switch. Blazel needed to touch objects to make it explode. All other abilities he'd seen needed a condition as well. However, Uncle Jack seemed like he didn't need any kind of activation at all. He simply just transformed into a green dragon whose strength reached that of a 9-star monster without any prior condition. Now, Michael would have accepted this as some kind of anomaly. However, he started to have some doubts when Uncle Jack summoned a meteor out of nowhere. He just said that he wanted to summon a meteor, and it magically appeared in the air. Is this an illusion? Michael first thought. However, when he observed it through any sort of verification, he noticed that it did look real. The dragon had a light mana signature just like any other monster or human. Even the mana quantity inside its body was proportionate to how powerful it was. Michael also felt the heat of the dragon's breath. It was burning through the cornfield maze with ease, increasing the ambient temperature and letting out copious amounts of black smoke in the air. By all metrics, everything looked real, even the meteor. But somehow, Michael felt that something wasn't right. Abilities didn't work this way. Uncle Jack shouldn't just be able to manifest a dragon or a meteor whenever he wanted to. At least, he wasn't powerful enough to do that. Knowing that there was some kind of secret to this power, Michael brought out his drone and unfurled its propellers. He then took out the glasses from its compartment at the side of the drone's body and equipped it in his head, entering the drone vision. Immediately, his consciousness was transferred into the drone, letting him pilot it as if it was his own body. Ha 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 ha! Come out! Come out! Wherever you are! The dragon bellowed out. But no matter how strong it was, it couldn't locate Michael anywhere in the cornfields. The drone remained on the ground as Michael waited for the perfect chance. And just as the dragon released its fiery breath, he took off as fast as he could, gaining altitude and escaping into the endless blue skies. The dragon's fiery breath masked the buzzing sound made by the drone's propellers. Not only that, but the dragon was far too occupied looking at the ground that it had a big blind spot in its vision of the sky. Now that he released the drone, Michael used its 360-degree camera to search for any anomalies in the sanctum. There must be a secret to his ability, Michael thought. If he could create anything out of his own imagination, then why can't he have just created numerous more dragons and taken over the world? Eventually, something caught his eyes at the very edge of the sanctum itself. There was a patch of land there that looked unusual, as if it had been dug up recently. He piloted the drone to float down and investigate. It wasn't long before he saw a small little cave opening beneath the ground and was hidden within the tall stalks of the corn. As he moved his drone closer, he finally saw him. It was Uncle Jack, sitting with his eyes closed as if he was sleeping. This was weird because he was supposed to have transformed into the giant green dragon that was rampaging through the sanctum. And suddenly, as soon as he laid eyes upon Uncle Jack, Michael heard the sound of glass breaking, as if the illusion had finally been unearthed. In just a single second, the entirety of the cornfield, which had mostly been burned to a crisp, started to shimmer and show the true reality of the situation. The grasses that had been burnt weren't really burned at all. It just looked like there was a very realistic projection cast over the grass to make it look like it was destroyed. Michael commanded the drone to move upwards, and as he looked at the sanctum once again, he saw the illusion start to waver and dissipate. Now that he knew that this was a fake reality, he saw the projection of the dragon and the meteor above start to appear really obvious. It just looked like a 2D projection from his perspective. Slowly, the effects of the dragon's breath start to revert back to normal. The mana that was burned away appeared instantly, as if it never left in the first place. The dragon's fire became as harmless as air. He finally figured out Uncle Jack's ability. He was able to create an illusion about anything and make it look as real as possible as long as his target couldn't see his real body. That was why when Michael laid eyes upon Uncle Jack, the ability shattered, allowing Michael to break free from the very realistic illusion. After figuring this out, Michael exited his drone vision and returned to his original body. He stood up, letting the dragon see him for the first time. "Have you finally decided to surrender, Michael?" Uncle Jack's pompousness and arrogance was clear in his voice. He thought he had Michael dancing on the palm of his hands. "So that's why he's so desperate to have me surrender," Michael realized. "It's because any damage that he makes won't be real. If I was hurt, I would feel the pain. But I wouldn't have been physically hurt at all. I'm not giving up. I'm giving you the chance to surrender," he said to Uncle Jack. "What the hell are you talking about? I am a great dragon. Humans and demi-humans bow before me," he said, acting like he was domineering. But from Michael's perspective, the dragon looked like it was made from a cheap and flimsy knockoff projector. Chapter 492, Glass Shattering. Seeing no sign of surrender from Michael, Uncle Jack got annoyed. The little boy should have been cowering under the great power of his dragon by now. The entire sanctum was getting burned by his fiery breath. "I'll tell you a little secret, Michael. I am the one responsible for your family's downfall," the dragon roared. "That's right. Your Uncle Max was stupid enough to fall into one of my scams. Ha 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 ha. It was actually so easy. I didn't have to do anything as the idiot was so desperate for a win that he believed every word I said even if I had no evidence. You should have seen the look on his face when he realized it was a scam. He even tried to report it to the association. But of course, I didn't let that happen. I used my influence as a royal to erase all traces of my dealings with him. And you know what I did with the money? I used it to hire the herbalist that concocted the poison I used to try and assassinate the Duchess." Uncle Jack's words were full of spite and venom, intended to get some sort of reaction from Michael. But instead of getting angry at the dragon, Michael just walked towards the corner of the sanctum, directly where Uncle Jack's real body was located. Uncle Jack's heart stopped for a moment as he saw this, but he quickly regained his composure once he realized that it was just a coincidence. Michael couldn't have seen through his ability. "My ability allows me to summon the help of other dragons," Uncle Jack proclaimed. And just like he said, the figures of 5 more dragons appeared on the horizon, spreading their wings wide and soaring towards their location. It wasn't long before they landed on the ground and started releasing streams of differently colored fiery breaths. But Michael just walked forward, never minding the insane heat and fire that was blasted directly in his direction. That's because it didn't affect him. It didn't even activate his absolute unity defense. "What? Why aren't you affected?" Michael walked forward, ignoring the dragons. "Stop this instant," the green dragon roared. "If you walk any further, then you will fall into a ravine filled with the most venomous snakes in the world. Their bites are not lethal, but it will destroy your magic core and make you experience a pain much worse than death." As soon as he said those words, the ground split horizontally in front of Michael. The cornfield separated, showing a large pit that spanned the entirety of the sanctum. Deep below, the sounds of snakes hissing echoed out into the air. Despite all that, Michael still walked forward and into the ravine. Surprisingly, he stepped into the air as if there was an invisible platform on top of the abyss. What? That's impossible. Your magic shouldn't work on my ability. Uncle Jack thought Michael used a spell to walk in the air. But in reality, he simply saw through the illusion and knew that there wasn't really a ravine deep below. It was just a projection. A sense of foreboding washed over Uncle Jack as Michael continued to walk unimpeded in the sanctum. All sorts of thoughts played in his head. Could Michael have some kind of magic spell that allowed him to break free from the illusion? Was he bluffing? Was he wandering around the sanctum with no idea? I gave you the chance, Michael said as he walked straight into the corner. Wait, where are you going? The dragon asked, raising one of its hind legs and slamming it in front of Michael to stop him. But instead, Michael just floated up and away from the dragon as if it didn't exist in the first place. Stop this instant. Uncle Jack's voice started quivering as he realized where Michael was going. But that wasn't possible, he thought. Michael couldn't have possibly broken through the secret of his ability since he hadn't seen his real body yet. Yet, Michael kept on walking towards the corner of the sanctum with purpose. It was as if he knew exactly where Uncle Jack's real body was hidden. As he reached the edge of the sanctum, he stopped. He then punched his hand into the ground before eventually yanking out Uncle Jack from underneath the cornfield stalks. Uncle Jack's face was ashen, with bits of soil and dirt all over his hair and face. How did you know? Uncle Jack asked, his lips quivering. That's not possible. My ability cannot be seen through by magic or anything else. You have to see me through your own eyes. You never saw me. As Michael held Uncle Jack by his collar, the drone slowly lowered down behind him, letting Uncle Jack see the reason for his downfall. What is that? Michael shrugged. It's a drone, he explained, knowing fully well Uncle Jack had no idea what it meant. Let go of me, Uncle Jack demanded. Yet no matter how much he tried to get away from Michael's grasp, it was of no use. You can't win against me. This is impossible. You're just a talented mystic arts user. You're a product of the past. He didn't want to believe that he was going to be defeated by someone who only used mana. I should have won. You don't even have an ability. It was at that moment that Michael's body started to glow. And suddenly, an image shimmered above his head. His diva, the two futuristic mechanical hands, finally showed itself in this duel. Uncle Jack's eyes widened, his breath gasping for air. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. You're a magnetic. But how? Michael took out an iron switch from his pockets and flicked it towards Uncle Jack's throat. And suddenly, no matter how much Uncle Jack tried to scream out, no voice nor air came out of his mouth. He struggled, unable to realize what was happening to him. I didn't use my ability in this fight because I knew I didn't have to. I only used it now to shut you up, Michael said, watching as Uncle Jack struggled to speak. Want to know how I knew I could beat you without it? It's because you are nothing but a scammer. That's how you win. That's the only way you can win. You scammed my uncle because you don't have the business acumen to build your own company and make it successful. And you might paint yourself as this insanely strong fighter, but that is nothing but your own bravado. You're weak, very weak. You can't even break free from my switch when most people break through it easily. Your entire ability is built on scamming. And your diva, I should have known. That is not a snake. It's a caterpillar whose defense mechanism makes it look like it's a venomous serpent. Your entire ability is built on a lie. Uncle Jack looked horrified as he realized who he was truly fighting against. He thought Michael was just a boy talented in the mystic arts. He would have never thought he had a diva as well. I gave you the chance to surrender. Now you can't. Uncle Jack's eyes widened. Without a voice, he couldn't surrender. Literally. Chapter 493. Viperion stranded. At the same time as Michael battled with Uncle Jack, there was a certain violet slime that was currently swimming in the shadows of Metropolis. Fudge ran through the tops of the roofs. Even though he didn't need it, He created hands on his blobby body and let it go behind him, copying the way that a famous ninja character ran in Michael's previous world. Ninja, ninja. I'm a good ninja, Fudge muttered to himself as he stopped atop a rooftop with a mansion right in his eye line. This mansion looked unimpressive at first. Its blocky architecture and very minimal decorations made it completely blend into the natural environment, with other people not even realizing that there was a mansion in this land. This was none other than Uncle Jack's hideout, where his supposed secret vault was hidden. If one tried to look inside this place, they wouldn't see anything out of the ordinary. In fact, it looked like there weren't even any people living inside it, making it look completely abandoned. But for Fudge, he saw a completely different reality. The shadows cast from the sun above in the sky perfectly hid a few assassin guards who used magic to obscure their presence. They barely breathed to limit the sound that their heart made, almost turning their body into a statue. Despite that, these guards had their attention fully open. Their eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, trying to ascertain if there was another intruder that hoped to get inside. It was at that moment that a single leaf fell from a tree that was located on their neighbor's side. As the leaf landed on the ground, four assassins wearing completely black clothing appeared out of nowhere and stabbed the leaf into the ground with their knives. False alarm, said one of the guards. This is overkill, complained one of the assassins. There's no way that an intruder would be able to disguise themselves as a leaf. You still lack training. We don't do this because we think there's an intruder. We do this for our own pride as assassins. We don't even let a single leaf pass by us. As the assassin guards were talking amongst each other, they were unaware that a violet slime was happily skipping towards the door. Fudge had successfully infiltrated the mansion. What took the prince and the princess months of planning and training only took a few seconds for the self-proclaimed best ninja slime. Once he was inside, his slime body separated into two, creating one perfect clone. Without a moment later, those two bodies split in half. This cell division-esque cloning continued until Fudge had nearly replaced all of the natural shadows in the mansion with his own clones. At this point, there was nothing in this mansion that he couldn't find. It wasn't long before one of his clones found a secret passageway that led to a basement room occupied by only one person. The man called Viperion was Uncle Jack's right-hand man. He was the person who was controlling the entire enterprise, making sure that everything ran smoothly and without a hitch. He knew all the dirty details of Uncle Jack's devious deeds. He was the only one who knew the location of the secret vault. But of course, Viperion was a hard man to crack. When Prince Harry and Princess Elizabeth infiltrated this mansion themselves, they tried everything in their power to try and break Viperion into giving up his business partner. However, Viperion was a man of focus and loyalty. No matter how much money they offered, no matter how much they pressured him, he wouldn't talk. Fudge laughed as he saw Viperion lounging in his chair, enjoying a nice cup of tea. Everything was going nice for the man with an oval face. Their business was very lucrative this season, as there were a lot of companies in and out of Metropolis that were very desperate to get an influx of cash. And the more desperate they were, the easier they could be duped. Viperion put down his tea and began looking over their plans for the month. But as he looked at the parchment paper, he realized that it was completely different from the one he wrote before. Now, the paper said, "Look down." Viperion sensed that something weird was afoot. He raised his head and looked around, only to see that his basement office was starting to get flooded with some kind of black liquid that was bubbling at its surface. What the? As the liquid reached his feet, he was glad to see that it wasn't toxic or anything. Still, he knew that this was weird. So, he started shouting for the assassin guards to come pick him up. "Hello? Anybody there?" But no one came down to check on him. Usually, a single word was all it took for them to follow his commands. This meant that something bad happened to the guards. Viperion waded through the ankle-deep flood and walked out of the basement. As he ran up the stairs, he saw the liquid gush out and slowly start to fill the basement he had just left. He continued to go up until he finally reached the ground floor of the mansion. Still, there were no signs of the guards or anyone else for that matter. It was as if the whole of Metropolis was silenced, and only the sounds of gushing liquid filled the world. He walked out of the mansion and saw that the flood had reached to his knees. Alarmed, he immediately climbed up to the roof of the mansion. "What is happening? Where is everybody?" he asked, his voice echoing back at him. A few hours later, the strange blackish-brown liquid had surpassed normal human heights, and the only thing that was above the flood were the roofs of tall buildings. Now that he'd been stranded here in the roofs, Viperion felt his tongue start to dry. He was desperate for food and water, but it seemed that those disappeared alongside every other person in Metropolis. A few more hours passed, and now he was starting to get dehydrated. The thought of drinking that strange liquid flood crossed his mind, but he was not yet desperate enough to try it out. A day passed, then another. At this point, he was starting to become delirious. With no other choice left, Viperion slowly bent down and scooped up the black liquid with his hands. He looked at the liquid and saw it fizzling in his hands. He took a big breath and poured the liquid onto his mouth. Immediately, the fizzy sensation sent a tingling effect on his mouth. After having a taste, he realized that this kind of feeling was strange, but it wasn't harmful. He gulped the liquid and felt himself wanting for more. He bent down again, and this time he didn't use his hands. He drank directly from the flood, almost inhaling it as he cured his dehydration. What is this? He thought it was poison, which was why he refrained from drinking it in the first place. But now, he realized that it wasn't that bad of a drink after all. In fact, it was very pleasant. Chapter 494, Uncle Jack's Surrender. Viperion spent the remainder of his days sustaining himself on only the blackish-brown liquid that washed over Metropolis. He didn't know why or how it worked, but he didn't question it any further. He was just glad he was alive. Days turned into weeks, then into months, and then into years. In total, he must have spent more than 10 years in this asylum, keeping himself company by building a new civilization on top of the drowned Metropolis. He created his new home out of broken rooftop tiles, with some kind of fountain that sprayed out the black liquid that he now called the agua. He drank this liquid every day, and instead of getting tired of consuming the same thing after years and years, Viperion felt even more and more enchanted with the agua. He couldn't live without it. It was what sustained him and kept him company through the years. And on this particular day, something changed that broke Viperion's daily routine. He looked out the window and saw a giant dome-like figure on the horizon. It colored violet and was larger than a mountain. Curious, Viperion took out his makeshift boat and began to paddle closer to this gigantic structure. And it was only when he got closer that he realized that it wasn't a structure at all. Instead, it was a giant slime looking down at him with indifference like a god. Who are you?" Viperion asked, afraid. "I am the great slime god," Fudge said, his voice low and echoing off the walls of his illusion. "And I was the one who trapped you into this world." Viperion was shocked. He always wondered throughout all these years how he was trapped in this world. He never expected it to be a god. Why? That was the only question running through Viperion's mind. During the first few years, he was angry, but then, he slowly started to accept his new life as if it was normal. And after 10 years, he completely adapted into this reality and made himself a home. It's because you are destined for something greater. You had to learn and change into the man you are now. Ask yourself, are you better as the man you are now, or the man you were 10 years earlier? Viperion stayed silent as he internalized the slime god's question. 10 years ago, he was just an orphan picked up off the streets and was taught to manage a multi-million gold coin company. He loved every second of it, even if he had to scam people to get it. He didn't care. He could finally buy stuff he could only dream of. But 10 years later, after being stuck in this place, all of those luxuries were washed away. The only thing that remained was agua. He learned how to live, how to create his own house. And after all this time, he realized that he was being used by Uncle Jack to do his dirty deeds. If he didn't spend years in isolation, he would have never realized that. "You're right, oh great slime god. I am a better man today," he confessed. "Good. Now is the time for you to return to your old life, after having learned this lesson. It's just like one of those reincarnation anime. Ahem. Never mind that last part. Fudge almost messed up and let his mysterious god facade slip. But I don't want to return, Viperion begged. I have everything I need down here. I have agua. Fudge flashed an imperceptible smile. That agua that you love so much is called a soda, and this version is inferior to the real thing. If you want to experience it authentically, then you must return to the real world. Viperion hesitated, not wanting to let go of 10 years of memory with this place. But the prospect of obtaining real agua made him strengthen his resolve. I am ready, O great slime god. I am willing to do what it takes to get that agua. No soda. Zeal and unyielding loyalty flashed on Viperion's face. Good. Now, do you remember your previous boss, Jack? I need you to tell me where his secret vault is located and we can bring him into justice. Viperion nodded. I shall lead you to the right door, great slime god. Meanwhile, back in the sanctum duel, Michael stared at Uncle Jack and couldn't help but savor this moment. You're going to pay for what you did, Michael vowed. Uncle Jack took this chance as he raised his mirror ball scepter in the air and swung it towards Michael's head. Despite being a blunt weapon, it was still a mithril relic nonetheless. Bashing someone's head with it could still do massive amounts of damage. But before it could reach Michael, the drone moved its barrels and pointed it straight at its target. With a single shot, the Unity gun broke through the glass ball in the mithril relic scepter and pierced straight through Uncle Jack's chest. He fell on his knees, weak. This was perhaps the first real pain Uncle Jack went through, which meant that he was thoroughly unprepared for it. "RRGGH!" he screamed out. After a minute of total silence from Uncle Jack, he was finally able to break away from Michael's switch ability. It fell off of his throat, allowing him to summon his voice again. "Ha, Amy? Pay for my crimes? You're wrong on that one. Even if I lose, you will never put me behind bars. You have no evidence. It's your word against mine. And if people are given a choice, they will always believe a royal man like me over a boy like you." Michael smiled. "Are you sure about that?" Uncle Jack tried to laugh. The hole in his chest made it hard to even breathe properly without experiencing a tremendous amount of pain. "Karg, I surrender." Once those magic words were muttered in the sanctum duel, the terms of the battle were finally met. Michael won the battle. Uncle Jack felt a tugging sensation on his body as the sanctum forced him out of this reality and back into the real world. Before he left, he flashed a confident smile to Michael, provoking him even further. Soon after that, Michael was taken away by the portal and spat out on the other side. Uncle Jack landed on the ground, clutching his chest in pain. "Arg! He tried to kill me!" he screamed out. He made sure to spread his blood on his chest as he presented the injury to Angela, their arbiter. However, Angela just ignored him and raised Michael's hand to declare him winner. "Michael Vanderbilt has won the duel." Uncle Jack gritted his teeth. "Are you not going to arrest him for trying to kill a royal? I'm going to have to report this behavior to the Duchess herself, and she will make sure you lose your job." Angela finally turned around and faced Uncle Jack, a sliver of a smile flashing on her mouth. "Good. Tell her that now." She then pointed to the side, where an old but glowing woman sat on the veranda of the castle, sipping tea with her twin children. Duchess? Chapter 495. Duchess. Michael opened his eyes and also saw the woman lounging and sipping tea in the veranda. Even if he didn't know her face, he could tell that she was the Duchess just from her posture and the overall aura of grandeur that she was giving off. She didn't look young, but she didn't look old. Despite the wrinkles, her face was still glowing like a spry 50-year-old. Just then, he felt a tug in his feet. He looked down at his shadows and saw Fudge giving him a wink and a thumbs up, signaling a successful mission. He smiled, knowing that Uncle Jack would soon be brought to justice for his crimes. "Duchess, I didn't think you would go back home so soon," Uncle Jack said hurriedly, trying to fix his hair and uniform. "I take it that the business with the tourists has gone well." The Duchess, with her white hair balled up in a nice little bow, didn't acknowledge Uncle Jack's words and just calmly finished her tea. It was only once she had her fill did she finally stand up and approach them. First of all, it is none of your business whether my deal was a success or not. And second of all, it would have gone better if I wasn't called back here to deal with a certain individual," she said, her words clear and authoritative. Everyone listened to her when she spoke. "Also, what were you saying about Angela and our new guests here?" Uncle Jack laughed off the awkwardness. "Oh, ha ha ha. It's a small matter, Duchess. No need to concern yourself with it." The Duchess glared at him. "You used my name. Clearly, I need to concern myself with it. All right. It's just that I have just finished a duel with this young man over here. Things didn't go well, as he started accusing me of crimes that I didn't commit. Not only that, but he tried to kill me as well." Uncle Jack twisted the story perfectly, trying to get the Duchess' sympathy. But before Uncle Jack could spin his lie again, the Duchess threw a bunch of scrolls in his direction. "And what is this?" she asked. Uncle Jack couldn't hide the shock in his eyes well enough. Those were his ledgers, his secret ledgers that were only found in his vault. How could it have seen the light of day? "It's very interesting about the records on these parchments. Embezzlement, fraud, and most importantly, attempted murder," the Duchess accused. He tried to maintain his composure, but he ended up becoming a bumbling idiot by the end of it. It's just nothing like." Seeing the triumphant smiles on Prince Harry and Princess Elizabeth's face, Uncle Jack knew that he was backed into a corner. He didn't know how they were able to get their hands on his vault, but if he were able to destroy it right then and there, they wouldn't be able to prove anything. Of course, his logic didn't make sense as the Duchess already saw it with her own eyes, but Uncle Jack was so desperate that he ended up just doing it anyway. He lunged forward into the scrolls, using a simple one-star ember spell to incinerate the ledgers into pieces. However, his clear ineptitude in the mystic arts showed its ugly head as he took more than 4 seconds to even materialize the magic circle in his hands. "Damn it!" he cursed, his magic circle shimmering. He eventually released the magic spell. But as just the ball of fire was about to reach the paper, Uncle Jack felt his control over the spell terminate. With the spell out of his control, the fireball shot towards his face and incinerated part of his wavy hair. Ah! The Duchess confronted her assassin. "I always suspected you had something to do with it, but it let my fondness for your brother get in the way of me accepting the truth. You are a criminal who deserves to forfeit their life in prison. Guards, seize him." 10 of her Secret Service guards appeared in an instant and immediately cuffed Uncle Jack's legs and arms, leaving him no chance to escape. "Let go of me," he thrashed. "I don't want to die. Forgive me." But all of his voices were ignored until he faded out into nothingness as the guards took him into a secure place that not even light could escape. "Ah, vindication. That feels good," Prince Harry said, sipping his tea with a serene smile. "Mother, you knew that he was the one that poisoned you?" Elizabeth asked, surprised. "Why didn't you arrest him sooner?" The Duchess sighed. "He is the last link to your father, and I thought that he would change. I was wrong." The royal twins hugged their mother after finally getting justice after all these years. "But let us not talk about family business. We have guests to entertain," she said as she looked at Michael and his family. "Vanderbilts. I must say I'm surprised." Max kneeled to the Duchess. "It's been a long while, Duchess." "Yes, it has been a while. The last time I saw you, your father had just handed you the reins to the Vanderbilt branch here in Metropolis." The pain of failure bore heavy in Max's heart. But now, it turned lighter now that he knew that the person responsible for the downfall of the Vanderbilts had been taken to justice. "Duchess, I would like for you to meet my nephew, Michael Vanderbilt." The Duchess walked over to Michael and observed him, looking him up and down. "You look just like him," she chuckled. "Me? Who?" "Your grandfather," she said. "You have the same eyes." I think that he would be extremely pleased to know that there was someone in his family to continue the legacy. And without missing a beat, Michael said this. "I'm not continuing his legacy. I'm building my own." The confidence in those words stunned the Duchess for a second. Most people would feel incredibly honored to be compared to the most successful businessman in the entire history of the world. Eyes was a legend now, in the past and in the future. But it looked like Michael wasn't planning on living under the shadows of his grandfather. He had grander plans than that. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. The Duchess tried to keep her composure and tried to cover up her amusement. But she ended up letting go of all pretenses and showing her true feelings. "My mistake," she said, wiping a tear. "You're nothing like your grandfather. You're much better." She then bent down and held out her hand. "Then let us introduce ourselves. I am Duchess Regina of Metropolis. And you are?" Michael took her hand firmly. "I am Michael from the Reborn company." The two shook hands. It was only later in the future where historians would record this as a monumental piece of history. Michael immediately liked the Duchess. Even though she held a high position, he didn't feel any pompousness or arrogance from her. She was even humble enough to greet him with a handshake, even though he was only a child. Duchesses weren't even supposed to bow or bend their knees to anyone. Chapter 496. Conversation with Regina. After dealing with Uncle Jack permanently, the Duchess invited the Vanderbilts to stay in their castle for the night. Max, Lilia, and Bart experienced the most luxurious dinner that they had ever seen. Expensive fishes straight from Atlantis, hydra meat that only the draconian race consumed, the legendary griffin feathers, and a lot of other things that didn't even look edible. But they were definitely expensive for sure. Michael, on the other hand, was occupied because of the 4 royal grandchildren who pestered him for more soda. He spent the night making them each a barrel of soda, and teaching them that it was better consumed with ice. They won't have trouble cooling it down because they had multiple mages on their employ. And as the night wore down, Michael was fetched by the Duchess out in the grass fields. He walked out of the veranda and saw her strolling in the grass as she observed the automobile up close and personal. "This is a fine piece of work," she marveled. "When Barnaby told me that there was going to be an upheaval in Metropolis soon because of this machine, I didn't believe him. He told me to go see it for myself, which was why I requested your presence here in my castle. In hindsight, I should have delayed so that you wouldn't have had to go through that duel with Jack. But I guess it's all for the better now since you took him down." Michael walked towards her. "That's all in the past now," he said. "Let's get down to business. Would you like to inspect the automobile?" This was very important. Her verification was the only thing he needed in order to make his truck and his automobiles legal in the streets of Metropolis. "My twins have already told me about the automobile. I know it's safe. What I want to know is its capacity. I want to see the limits of what it could do." Michael nodded, knowing exactly what she was trying to say. "Would you like to try it for yourself?" he said as he tossed her the keys. The Duchess smiled as she took the keys and went inside the driving seat. And after he told her everything she needed to know to drive, she immediately stepped on the gas pedal and raced through the grass fields at high speeds. I guess I know where Elizabeth's talent for driving comes from, Michael thought. Just like her, Regina was a natural at the wheel. Meanwhile, her Secret Service guards were inwardly biting their nails as they saw this scene unfold. But they couldn't do anything. She explicitly told them not to bother her during this time. 5 minutes later, the car skidded in front of Michael and came to a complete stop. The car's exhaust was almost panting, as if it couldn't keep up with its driver at all despite being a machine. "This is beyond my expectations. And to think that it only requires oil to function. It's a miracle," the Duchess claimed. "Once you put a carriage behind it to increase the loading capacity, then I can see the automobile revolutionizing Metropolis." Michael smiled, knowing that this was his chance to showcase another one of his automobiles. "There's no need to do that. The automobile is designed only for human transport. I have another one called a truck. That one is a lot larger and is designed to carry a lot of items. Would you like to see it?" The Duchess was surprised. She immediately agreed. Michael used his shadow skill to transport the large 6-wheeler truck into the Duchess grassfields in an instant. Because of its size and weight, the amount of mana in the air decreased significantly, to the point that even the Duchess was able to sense the difference. That is amazing," She had heard from her children that Michael was extremely talented in the mystic arts, but she didn't know just how much. Seeing it firsthand made her audibly gasp out loud, as she would have never thought that something as gigantic as the truck could be teleported with a spell. Why haven't the Guild of Arcana taken you in as their next big genius? She asked genuinely. If he had chosen the path of the mystic, then he would have been renowned across the entire world by now. I'm not interested in that. I just want to build a world that I'm comfortable in, he answered her truthfully. And this is how I'm going to do that. Set your sights onto our truck. It can carry weights up to 10 tons. That number was jaw-dropping. Transporting that kind of weight would have taken at least 100 carriages going back and forth through large distances. The labor and expenses for such a large task would have certainly halved the profits that a company would have made. But with this truck, one needed only one trip. And with its speed, the travel time would be reduced to a mere fraction. The Duchess' eyes glistened as all sorts of ideas popped into her head. She started to think about the problems of Metropolis and how the automobiles and the trucks would solve every single one of them. This was truly revolutionary. The Duchess felt like she was in the start of a new era, one where it was heralded by the rise of this automobile. Because of that, she knew that she had to jump on the bandwagon as soon as possible. I want to purchase as many automobiles as you can produce, she declared. Michael smiled. He expected this. Almost anyone who saw the truck would want one for themselves. Here's the problem, Duchess. I don't think that your roads are capable of withstanding the weight of this truck. A simple four-wheeler truck is the limit. If you want bigger trucks like this, then you'll have to expand and fortify your streets. The Duchess was perceptive. She saw through the hidden message in Michael's words. I take it that you can provide stable enough roads for these trucks? She asked, amused. As a matter of fact, yes. My Golden Road has already been tested to withstand multiple trucks and automobiles riding through them without fail. You don't need to look further than Angora City to see how better their streets became after I implemented new roads. The Duchess couldn't help but smile as Michael made his pitch. The more she interacted with him, the more he looked like he wasn't a child at all. His business acumen rivaled and bested that of adults. Ha ha ha. Don't get so ambitious now, Michael. Let's start with your automobiles first. Once the roads need improvements, then you will be the first one I'll consider. Why not start now? He asked her. You're not ready for it, she told him. Your inventions may be good, but your company is not ready to handle such a task. After all, if I allow you to start renovating the entirety of Metropolis, it will look like you have become the sponsor of the territory. Your company isn't ready for that. Michael looked at her and saw wisdom behind her eyes. She was giving him advice, and it would be stupid of him not to take it. All right, he acquiesced. Then the automobiles first. Chapter 497. Duchess for a Reason. The Duchess then flashed a smile as she looked at Michael. But if you really insist on wanting to increase your standing in Metropolis as fast as possible, then I can give you the contract to replace all our streets with your own design. Her offer looked really tempting, but Michael knew that there was a but coming. But I have a condition for that. I need all of your automobiles and trucks that you can produce. Not just one, not just 10. All of them. If you can do that, then I'm willing to go out of my way and declare that your company is now our sponsor. Your rankings will immediately shoot up the Golden 500. What do you say? On the surface, this was a very good deal. Having a permanent contract with the Duchess herself allowed them to earn money perpetually. However, if Michael were to accept this deal, then he would think about his profits in the short term. But in the long term, this was a bad deal. If I accept this, then does that mean that I can't sell automobiles and trucks to the rest of Metropolis? He asked, already knowing the answer. That's right. It'll only be our property. This severely limited the scope and range of the automobiles. If he could only sell them to the royal family, then it would severely limit the future of automobiles as the leading transportation of the entire globe. That was not what he wanted. Michael hadn't even spoken yet, but the Duchess already knew what he was thinking about. This is the price of becoming the sponsor of Metropolis, Michael. Mind you, not even Alaric or any of the legacies have been given the privilege of hearing the price of sponsorship. Even if they give me their entire companies, I would still refuse them outright. But I'm willing to give this opportunity to you, Michael. I believe that your automobile has a high enough value to allow you to become a major partner in Metropolis. This is a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Do you accept it? Of course, Michael knew he had to say no. Metropolis wasn't his end goal. It was the entire world. He looked at the Duchess and saw an almost imperceptible glint on her eyes. It was almost as if she knew that he was going to reject the deal. She's shrewder than I thought. She knew that the deal wasn't good, but she still offered it because she wanted to see how I would react. It was a test. She wanted to find out if he could discern a good deal or not. And if I reject the deal, then she would find out that I am as good of a businessman as she thinks. If I accept the deal, then she gets access to one of the most important inventions in the entire world. She would get sole access to the automobiles in Metropolis. A smile grew on Michael's face. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to decline, he said to her, bowing respectfully. But if you want to buy my automobiles, then I'm afraid you'll have to wait until the auction takes place. I have an agreement with Barnaby that allows me to auction them off to the highest bidder. There was hidden subtext in his words. If you want to buy the automobiles, then you'll have to get in line. And you better make sure to prepare as much money as you can possibly take out. After a second, Duchess Regina couldn't help but laugh out loud once again. She immediately sensed Michael's words. Ha ha ha. All right, then I will wait patiently for the time to come. In the meantime, you better make sure that the automobiles are in good condition. I'll be using them immediately once I obtain them. The Duchess' words were straight and direct. She was going to get that automobile in the auction no matter what. There was a sense of confidence and power in her words that Michael dared not to doubt. Something told him that she would pull out all the stops just to show off her wealth to him. Even though she knew that this wasn't going to be the only automobile in Metropolis, and that Michael was going to be selling them wholesale in the future, the Duchess still wanted to have a show of power and wealth to everybody by obtaining the automobiles before everybody got them. That's gangster, Michael thought. Then does that mean that automobiles are officially allowed in the streets of Metropolis? He asked her. Yes, I've seen enough. Michael's excitement grew. Finally, he could start his business and hopefully gain enough to get the ranking he needed to participate in the auction. Once they were done talking, Michael and the Duchess talked for a little bit more until it was time to sleep. And the next day, the Vanderbilts prepared to return to their estate. The Duchess requested Michael's presence one last time before they left, and he had a good guess as to what she wanted to talk about. They met in her royal throne room, where she sat in a high chair overlooking the entire palace. Michael, I hope you had a good sleep. I've had better, he said truthfully. The bed was far too stiff and there wasn't any heating in the room to make himself completely comfortable. The Duchess laughed, knowing that the bed she gave him was worth 1,000,000 gold coins, since they were made out of exotic duck feathers. As for me, I haven't had this good of a sleep in a long time, she said as she looked fondly on the back where her children and grandchildren were happily frolicking in the halls. This is all thanks to you, Michael. Because of that, I want to give you what you deserve. The Duchess gestured for someone to come, and soon, Angela came out of the shadows and kneeled to the throne. I have prepared for the item as you requested, she said, fixing her thin glasses. With a nod, Angela turned to Michael and presented him with a metal box. Upon first inspection, Michael thought it was a solid piece of aluminum. But as Angela handed it over to him and his hand made contact with the metal, he felt a tug in his heart. There was something inside the box that was called. Could it be? He twisted the metal block, with the internal mechanism allowing it to unfold from the top like a present opening. The top face recessed, allowing the object inside to shine a light on Michael's face. He looked down and saw a raw piece of metal which was burning intensely with a white fire. A god-forged piece, he muttered. The Duchess smiled. Angela told me about your terms of the duel. This is what you've been aiming for, is it not? As expected of the Duchess, she immediately knew the hidden trap Michael set up for Uncle Jack. She was the Duchess for a reason. I had Jack's Godforge pieces surgically removed. He won't need it anymore. Not only that, but I gave a little bit more pieces in there for you. It's what Jack would have received if he had not strayed from the path of a royal. Chapter 498. Duchess Gifts. Michael couldn't hide his surprise as he stared at the large piece of Godforge in the box. He knew he was entitled to what Uncle Jack had because of the duel, but he didn't expect the Duchess to throw in a little extra just because she wanted to. No need to thank me. It's what you deserve. If it weren't for you, then that man would have continued terrorizing the palace and Metropolis for a long time. He had no words except for, "Thank you." Well, if you're going to thank me, then you'd better do it at the end because this is not the only thing that I am giving you. He looked up and saw a smile on the Duchess's face as she leaned on her hand, looking at him fondly. As it turned out, the evidence of Jack's failed assassination plot on me is not the only thing that was discovered. Your family is also one of many victims of his fraud and scamming operations, the Duchess revealed. Michael kept silent as she talked about the leaked documents. After Fudge successfully convinced Viperion to give up the location of Uncle Jack's secret vault, they got all of the documents and ledgers about his empire built on fraud. Then, Fudge directly teleported back into the Duchess Palace and reported to Harry and Elizabeth about what they found. The royal twins then alerted the Duchess about it, which led to her meeting with the tourists to be cut short and was immediately brought back to Metropolis. Initially, Harry and Elizabeth wanted to rightfully honor Fudge as the one who discovered the evidence and proof. However, the self-proclaimed best ninja in the world refused. He said he didn't want to be known, saying that he worked better in the shadows. I have heard from my Uncle Max that he suspected Jack to be the one who deceived him, Michael said. Now that I have the proper reports and evidence, I can safely say that justice will be served. The Vanderbilt family will receive the full amount of money that they lost during the deception, with a 20% addition to account for all the emotional distress that this may have caused the Vanderbilt family. If Max heard about this, he would definitely be overjoyed into tears. But Michael knew that he could get a little bit more. Just 20. The Duchess chuckled. Fine. 23%. 40. 25. 30%. Final offer, Michael asserted. And you give us Jack's mansion. The Duchess leaned back on her throne and looked at Michael, hiding her mouth in her hands. Deal. I was going to give you that property anyway, she said, having an expression of triumph against Michael. I would have taken 20% anyway, he replied back to her sassily. Meanwhile, Angela and the other guards stationed in the throne room couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Someone was able to make the Duchess negotiate. She always stood firm in her first offer and never accepted any bargaining from the other party. Are you satisfied now? Duchess Regina asked Michael. Very, he replied, bowing down to her in respect and motioning to go outside. Wait, there is one other thing that I want to give you. He quickly turned around, not knowing what more he could have gotten. He got the Godforge, the money, and even the property. The Duchess then got up from her throne and walked down the steps towards Michael. And as she faced him, she took out a medallion from her pocket and presented it to Michael. The medallion itself looked to be made out of obsidian, as it had a very reflective sheen. The image of the Duchess' face was sketched onto the black medallion wearing her crown and her royal scepter peeking out from below. He guessed that this medallion was quite old since the Duchess looked very young in this depiction. She looked to be the same age as Elizabeth, who was in her late 20s to early 30s. As soon as this black medallion was given to Michael, gasps resounded throughout the throne room. Even Angela couldn't keep her composure and stared at the Duchess in disbelief. What is this? He asked her, treating the medallion quite carelessly, tossing it around and making everyone else almost have a heart attack. This is my official seal as the Duchess of Metropolis. Just keep it with you at all times. But I must warn you, it can only be used one time, so be selective on when to use it. Knowing you, I'm sure you'll pick the perfect timing, she said, winking at him. Michael still didn't know what the medallion did. The Duchess' vague words certainly didn't help. However, everyone's reaction to the medallion did give him a hint to how important this piece of metal was. He guessed that it was kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card or some sort. Thanks, I guess? The Duchess was all smiles as Michael pocketed the medallion. Now go on your way, she said, shooing him off. Michael awkwardly got up and slowly walked out of the throne room, ignoring the gazes of disbelief from everyone he passed. As the doors to the throne room closed, the Queen quietly went back on her throne and hummed a happy tune. She was soon interrupted as Angela walked up to her and kneeled at her side. Duchess, I don't think it's a good decision to give him the medallion. No offense to him, but he and his company do not qualify for such an honor, she said, her concern genuine. Fufufu. Is that what you think? The Duchess said, a smile growing on her face. Did you see his reaction when I gave him the Godforge pieces? Angela recalled the moment. He was surprised and grateful. His win against Jack already proved that he is a magnetic. And a good one at that. But I don't think it's enough for him to get the medallion, Duchess. With the authority that comes from that, he can ask to become the sponsor of Metropolis and you will be forced to give it to him without question. Or, he can practically get away with murder in Metropolis and still come out unscathed. They talked about Metropolis sponsorship and how the price for it was sole ownership of the automobiles and trucks produced by Michael. By giving him the medallion, the Duchess practically gave him what he wanted without getting anything in return. Alaric or the other legacies would give up a leg and a half to get that medallion. Not just them, but even the Order of the Heavenly Knights as well as the Guild of Arcana would willingly pay a heavy price to get that medallion from you. I just don't think that it's worth it to give to such a young man who has not proven himself yet. Sure, he's talented in mystic arts, but we all know that's not the only metric to measure success. The Duchess gently shook her head and disagreed. You weren't thinking deep enough, Angela. Did you notice how he didn't ask for help in securing an appointment for surgery? He willingly accepted the Godforge pieces knowing that he can't do anything with it. With his negotiation skills, as you saw earlier, he could have bargained for me to help him install those Godforge pieces in his heart. But he didn't. I don't think he has to. Angela's face contorted as she couldn't understand what the Duchess was trying to imply. It was only after a minute of silence later that a stroke of realization hit her in the face. No way. Are you saying he's a natural magnetic? Chapter 499, Duchess Guess. That's insane, Duchess. A natural magnetic is just a thing of legends. Not a single one has ever been documented in the current era. Despite the impossibility, there was absolutely no indication that the Duchess was kidding. Duchess Regina fully believed in her theory that Michael was a magnetic blessed by the Godforge pieces themselves. He's not only has an 8-element master but also a natural magnetic as well? Don't you think that's a little absurd? Angela couldn't believe the leap that the Duchess took. Just because Michael didn't accept any help in surgically inputting the Godforge pieces into his heart didn't automatically mean that he could do it himself. It's exactly because he has an 8-element mastery that I think he's a natural magnetic. Wasn't that kind of talent in the mystic arts also considered as a myth? Is it so hard to believe that he also has great talent in cultivating divas? The Duchess asked, her gaze locked on the door from where Michael left. You think there's a connection? Angela asked as if realizing something. I don't know. I'm just saying that if there's anyone that could be a natural magnetic, then it's him. Angela was left in silence as she began to think about the consequences of this theory. If Michael was a natural magnetic, then her estimation of his strength would have to be completely thrown over the roof. She'd have to think of him in the likes of Alaric and the other legacies, all while still being only 13 years old. It was wild to think about. I think I'm starting to understand now why you gave the medallion to him, Angela muttered. You're investing in him. You think that he's going to become a big figure in Metropolis. The Duchess chuckled. You're one half correct. It's not just him that I'm investing in. It's also his company. Angela was once again stumped. Sure, their automobiles have the potential to completely overhaul the system of Metropolis, but I don't think that his company is yet up to the standards that you say they are. Michael may be strong, talented, and wise, but he's only one man. No matter how good he is, he can't reach the global stage alone. Even Alaric couldn't have reached the top of Metropolis all by himself. Orion and Perseus, and the rest of his officers are formidable fighters and thinkers that gives Alaric the chance to compete in the global stages. As for the Reborn Company, I have yet to see them prove their worth. All of their feats have been accomplished solely by Michael. She made a very good point. All of the amazing and jaw-dropping achievements that the Reborn Company made was actually just Michael's accomplishment alone. The Duchess must have been aware of this. Yet, she still believed that the Reborn Company could reach much greater heights. I think there's more to them than meets the eye, the Duchess said, her eyes having a 1,000-meter deep stare into nothingness. They haven't fully shown off their capabilities in Metropolis. What makes you say that? The Duchess smiled and pointed to the scrolls and ledgers they found that implicated Jack on all the crimes he committed. You know how I found those papers? They just magically appeared in my office. Imagine that. Papers that would completely prosecute Jack just appeared on my doorstep at the perfect timing. I asked Harry and Elizabeth if they knew where it was from. They said they didn't know. Ha ha ha. They were always terrible liars. Angela started to put the pieces together. Was he the one responsible for it? Yes. Or more specifically, one from his personal staff. Jack's mansions were well guarded by incredibly alert guards. And because he used to be a royal, those guards came directly from the Duchess' Secret Service. Yet somehow, someone from Michael's company was able to infiltrate the mansion undetected, and also convince one of Jack's most trusted employees to give up the location of the secret vault. Angela couldn't help but completely rethink her evaluation of the Reborn Company. She shook her head as she tried to compare them to other companies in Metropolis. Exasperation took hold of her as she couldn't place Reborn anywhere in the rankings. They were a complete wild card, in her opinion. Do you see now why I gave him the medallion? I'm excited. I want to see how he'll shake up the foundation of Metropolis. Yes, I understand it now, Duchess. Regina then noticed a look on her attendant's face. What's wrong, Angela? It's nothing, Your Highness. It's just that I remembered my sister. The Duchess remembered that Angela did have a sister. Yes, what was her name again? Eula? Una, Duchess. She was instructed by our grandmother to go to the King's region and advance her studies in diplomacy. Last I heard, she seemed to have just arrived here in Metropolis. The Duchess didn't know why, but she found that quite amusing. Have you reached out to her yet? Angela shook her head. She doesn't know that I took residence in your palace, Your Highness. And to be honest, I don't know how to break the news to her. Why not just invite her here? The Duchess asked warmly. It'll be good for me to get to know her. Wasn't she considered a genius as well? Yes, Angela nodded, her face having a glint of pride. Our grandmother has been raising her up to be her successor. If not for that, she could have become a heavenly knight in the order. The Duchess couldn't help but praise the genes of Reena Montgomery. Just then, she thought of a silly little scenario. Ho ho ho. I wonder what would happen if the two of them were to meet? Angela raised her head. Michael and Una? The Duchess clapped her hands. Yes. Wouldn't it be a perfect pairing? I'm not so sure about that, Angela muttered. Our grandmother is not so fond of the Vanderbilts. You don't know Reena like I do, said the Duchess, laughing. If she meets Michael, I'm sure she'll like him just like I do. The boy has the same fangs as eyes, but is a completely different species from him. She'll be able to appreciate him, especially since it doesn't look like him and his grandfather have that much of a connection. Judging from the fact that Michael didn't use his last name all that often, the Duchess correctly deduced that he was trying to separate from the legacy of eyes as far away as possible. And that was what Reena exactly liked. Just then, the doors to the throne room burst wide open as the royal grandchildren came running inside and playing swords and shields. My little cuties, the Duchess warmly greeted them. The four children ran to their grandmother and began jumping up and down on her throne, completely disregarding her authority as the Duchess. She didn't seem to mind, though, as she fondly wrapped her arms around them. Boss Mikey left. Now we don't have any more soda. Grandma, can we have more soda? Please. Seeing her grandchildren like this, Regina couldn't help but be curious. What's soda? The children hurriedly exited out of the throne room and happily gave their grandmother a cup of soda from the barrel that Michael left before he returned to the Vanderbilt estate. The Duchess looked at the carbonated drink and cautiously took a sip. And as soon as she felt that fizz on her mouth, her eyes widened. Not a lot of people knew this, but she actually had a sweet tooth. She loved the soda immediately, just like her grandchildren. Chapter 500, Thinking of Soda Business. Michael and the Vanderbilt family were soon returned to their estate. Of course, they were once again escorted by the Duchess' personal guards, gathering a lot of odd looks from their neighbors. Max was the first one to get out of the carriage. His eyes looked dazed, as if he was in a constant state of shock. Tracy, his wife, walked up to the gate and saw her husband walking with his head down. Immediately, she thought that something had gone wrong. "It'll be okay," she consoled him. The other Vanderbilt family members got out of the gates and welcomed back their relatives. "What happened? Why did you meet with the Duchess? Do we have to leave the mansion? Should we start packing now?" Everyone looked towards Max, whose legs were jelly and had to hold on to his wife to keep walking. We got it," he muttered, unheard by the others. "What did you say?" We got it back," Max murmured louder. "Got what back?" Tracy asked, staring at her husband. Max then stopped in his tracks and looked up at the skies. It was bright blue and full of hope. "We got it back," he shouted to the top of his lungs, surprising the rest of the Vanderbilt family. "Dad? What are you talking about?" his son William asked. "Our money. We got our money back," Max explained. "We found the culprit for the scam and the Duchess is giving us everything we lost. Plus 30%. This time, everyone in the Vanderbilt family showed the same dazed expression Max had in the beginning. They had been hoping for this for so long that they completely gave it up. But now that it was here, they could hardly believe it. It was at that moment that the royal attendant that escorted them from the palace approached him. "Max Vanderbilt, the Duchess would like to personally apologize for any hurt that the royal family has caused you." Max immediately got down on his knees and waved his hands. No. The Duchess already spoke to me about that. I told her that I didn't blame her." The royal attendant then took out a scroll and read its contents right within earshot of the Vanderbilt family. "For compensation, Her Highness will give you the full amount of money you lost, plus 30%. She is also presenting you with the former territory of Jack, his mansion and all his belongings inside it. The Duchess knows that this is not enough to erase the hurt that you have suffered, but she hopes that it's enough to heal." Max was handed the official deed to Jack's mansion, as well as the keys to unlock it. The royal attendant then looked back at the soldiers and clapped. "Please bring the chests inside their mansion," he told them. The Duchess royal guards began unloading heavy chest after heavy chests inside their territory, making every single Vanderbilt stunned into silence. Each time those chests hit the ground, the very satisfying sound of gold coins clinking against each other resounded out and made their jaws a little more dropped each time. "Dad, is this real?" William asked as he opened one of the chests and was met with a mountain of literal gold coins. Its shiny luster reflected onto the faces of the Vanderbilts, stunning them. "I don't know. It doesn't feel real," Max said. He quickly turned to Michael, the boy responsible for all of this. "I can't take this. You should have it." "I didn't even do anything." Michael backed away, his hands refusing. "That's your money, not mine. It was just returned to you with a little bit of extra." Max still wanted to give at least the 30% extra money to Michael for all he has done for the Vanderbilt family. "Trust me, brother. He doesn't need it," Bart said. "That's right. My boy wants you to have all of it, so you should get all of it," Lilia added. Max then looked at the deed in his hands and pushed it into Michael's chest. "How about this mansion? Michael, you should have it. You're the one who got the documents in the first place. Now, this new territory would be extremely useful for a budding company like Reborn." However, Michael knew that Max and the Vanderbilt family needed it more than him. He was quite content with what he had in Main Street. That can't do, Max asserted. You have to take this deed whether you like it or not. There was absolutely no changing his mind. Max felt that he had received enough blessings for one day. He would just feel bad knowing that he reaped all the rewards while Michael was the one who did all the work. Seeing his uncle's stubbornness, Michael thought of an idea. How about we share it? I have a bit of an idea on how we could use the new real estate. Max wanted to immediately refuse and just outright give the deed to him, but Michael interrupted him first. Now, this isn't a charity. This is a business deal between the two of us. I'm thinking of starting a soda business in Metropolis. And it just so happens that I need a new factory to mass manufacture these drinks. My idea is that we tear down the mansion entirely and build a factory there that produces soda. I'll be in charge of all the materials, the ingredients, everything. Meanwhile, your family is the one in charge of manufacturing. I'll essentially hire you all to make soda. How about it? Now usually, for these kinds of products, Michael would have just chosen to create a factory back in the nation of Reborn since they had unlimited real estate there. That was his original plan. But now that they were handed a new territory, it sounded like the perfect moment to create a new factory here in Metropolis. It would save him a lot of money with transportation. Not only that, but he'll be giving his relatives jobs to make a living. What about it? Michael asked him. Max looked back at his family and saw them all fawning over the millions of coins in the chest. I accept, Max said, enthusiastically shaking Michael's hands. This was the chance he'd been waiting for. This was the chance for the Vanderbilt name to once again soar through the skies of Metropolis. And now, Max could be assured that they were in the right hands. In his heart of hearts, Max knew he wasn't fit to be a leader. He was more of a follower. And he had a feeling that following Michael was the right decision. It was the only decision. Michael had proved himself to be a terrific person and businessman. Max felt honored that he would get to be a part of such a company with very high potential. This is great, Lilia cheered, clapping at this very special occasion. The other Vanderbilts were also brought near to tears as they heard about their new jobs at Michael's factory. They didn't know what they would be doing, but at least they could do something. And so, a feast commenced in the Vanderbilt estate until late in the night. But while everyone partied, Michael worked. It was now time to unleash the armada of automobiles in Metropolis. Chapter 501, Automobiles Deployed. Michael immediately transported himself back to Main Street in the Upperwood district. There, he was welcomed by Shiina and the rest of the crew, all eagerly working as they began decorating their headquarters and their store for the eventual opening of their company. Lord Michael, welcome back. How do you like the place? Shiina asked, bowing. Michael looked around the room and felt like he was transported back to his previous world. The lobby of their new headquarters looked exactly like one of those high-rise buildings from large cities that were very spacious, had a modern and simplistic design yet still showed luxury quietly. The whole place was powered by a generator running in the background, powering the lights and all the operations needed like the plumbing and other such systems. At the very front of the lobby was a large signage of Reborn, in all caps, and had subtle yellow lighting on the background. I like it. It feels very professional, he praised them. We're glad you like it, Lord Michael. There are some things that you still need to settle, though. Would you like to meet with Kong to discuss the elevator? Michael was confident of Kong's skill. He didn't need any help. I trust him on this, he said. For now, I want to meet with Castell and discuss the plans for opening up our store. Shiina nodded and guided Michael down to the lowest part of their headquarters, 10 floors underground. This was their strategic meeting place for all Reborn major decisions. Castell had already made herself a home in one of the rooms. She made an office and a personal lounge, which was quite small and wasn't that befitting of a CEO like her. You know you could have made it larger, he told her. I'm fine with this, young master. I only need a bed to sleep in and I would be satisfied. Castell couldn't be argued with. Even after all this time, she still wore her Vanderbilt-made uniform despite being the CEO and head of all operations of Reborn for a few years now. Let's talk about our department store on Main Street. How is it going? Castell took out a few papers from her envelope and began giving it to Michael. We have prepared a specific list of items that we think are going to do well in Metropolis. This is compiled from all the customer information that the Shadow Orcs have gathered in the Upperwood District. We are of the opinion that we should be selling items that people are already familiar with. Of course, our products are a lot higher in quality, so people will naturally want to buy ours instead. This will get them through the door. Now, in order to distinguish ourselves from the other companies, we think that it's best if we now introduce them to items that they'd never seen before. This will leave them a lasting impression and allow the Reborn name to naturally be spread in the customer's mindspace. Michael looked at Castell's report and found nothing wrong with it. Okay, let's go with your plan. Have you started the delivery of the items? Castell nodded. The trucks are on their way to Metropolis as we speak. We have taken them from our stockpile in Angora City, so they will probably arrive in 1 or 2 days tops. According to her reports, there would be about 10 trucks in total going to Metropolis, carrying all the items they were going to sell in the department store. And in the future, about 5 more trucks would come every week in order to replenish their goods. And once demand goes up, they would probably have to increase the delivery of items even more. Thankfully, the Duchess had already assured him that the guards at the wall would allow them passage once they arrived. Now all he had to do was wait. There is one more thing that I want to do. Shiina, I was just recently given stewardship of a mansion near the castle of the Duchess. I'm planning to build a soda factory there. Shina's eyes widened. Soda, Lord Michael? That is a very interesting product indeed. This is perfect, Castell claimed. It will allow us a better foot in the door if we focus all our efforts in advertising soda to our customers. Since the Reborn company offered anything and everything, there wasn't really a distinct product that they were known for. This would make it hard for people to remember them, since they didn't know what they offered. Of course, this was no problem in territories that they already conquered. But for Metropolis, where they were unknown, one breakthrough product was all they needed to get their name in the zeitgeist of Metropolis. People would know Reborn for their sodas. And once they got to know Reborn better, then their other products would become popular as well. Shiina, have our engineers design a factory for the sodas. I'll give them all the details, so please assemble a team for me. The white-scaled Dragonborn nodded and immediately gave a list of the engineers she needed. With the help of the Shadow Orcs, those engineers were directly teleported to their meeting room. Thanks for meeting with me, he said to them. This is what we need to do. He told them the specifications of the factory, what they produced, and what operations were needed to get that end result. After all, they weren't just making the sodas in the factory. They were also making the glass bottles needed to sell them. This is doable, boss. Just give us a few days and we can get the draft done, said one of the engineers. 1 day passed. Back in the association headquarters, Claudia buried her head into her desk as piles and piles of paperwork came into her room. Miss Claudia, the Crocodile Leather Company is requesting a duel with their rival, the Alligator Club. Miss, 2 high-ranked wine companies are requesting their own sanctum duel. They wish to ask if we can get them ahead of schedule. Claudia groaned. No, we are already backed up as it is. She was having trouble with the influx of duels because everyone was in a hurry to prepare for the parade. And if the timing couldn't get any worse, the auction at Barnaby's vault was also close at hand, further increasing everyone's desire to stock up with as much money and power as they could store. Miss Claudia, there seems to be a commotion in our lobby. There's a lot of big shots requesting your presence, said one of her employees, hurriedly. Claudia sighed and got up off her desk and walked to where the commotion was taking place. And as she got there, she saw that there were quite a few high-ranking company leaders waiting patiently in their chairs. They weren't at the level of the Legacies, but they were still up there in terms of ranking. For example, the Crocodile Leather Company was in the 312th spot, while the Alligator Club was in the 325th spot. Mr. Crocodile, Mr. Alligator, what have you come here for? Claudia asked them. The crocodile man, wearing crocodile leather all over his body like a cowboy, tipped his hat at Claudia. We're here to get a duel, ma'am. I want to get his spot in the product approval. Chapter 502, Trucks. This was not the first time that Claudia heard this kind of term in a duel. After all, Metropolis was a well-regulated territory. Not just anyone can sell a product that was untested and unproven by their standards. The Duchess and her royal family ensured the safety of their citizens through this strict regulation method. Now, because of the pressure of the parade as well as the auction, many people were pressed to find better products to sell to the general public, as well as the tourists that were going to be visiting them soon. Many people know that tourists from another continent lived a completely different life. Therefore, the products that many people need here in the royal continent may not necessarily be wanted by the tourists that would be visiting them. It was very well possible that a rare product could be considered common in their continent, and vice versa. Because of this, many companies were starting to develop new products that could possibly allure those tourists into buying from their company. Now comes the problem for many companies. The sheer volume of people that are requesting inspections from the royal family was up in the tens of thousands. There were far too many of them. And given that inspections took about 1 day at the earliest and a week at the latest, many companies had to face the realization that they would probably have to wait a year or two to get their products verified by the proper authorities. That would be far too late. Of course, many people could choose to have their products unverified. However, tourists would be more likely to purchase from companies that had the official seal of the Duchess. So, people were still very much desperate to get their products checked. That was why many companies chose to battle it out against other companies to get a much better spot. "I'm sorry, but you will have to wait for your allocated time period," Claudia said, apologizing to the alligator man and the crocodile man. The two company owners pursed their lips and shook hands amicably. Just then, Claudia felt another tap on her shoulder. "What is it?" she asked, a bit exasperatedly. It was one of her employees, who Claudia assumed was about to tell her about another pair of companies wanting to have a duel. "Miss Claudia, there's been some commotion at the gates. Some are even saying that we could be getting raided." She certainly wasn't expecting that kind of news. Claudia immediately went on horseback and rushed to the south side wall entrance, where there was already a large crowd of people gathering around the streets. Using her authority, Claudia pushed through the mass and onto the very front of the line, where a line of soldiers were keeping everyone at bay. "What's happening?" she asked them. One of the soldiers saluted before explaining. "It's because of those metal objects, madame." He pointed in the horizon, where there were 10 monstrous-like metal objects running towards Metropolis at fast speeds and kicking up a dust storm behind them. It definitely looked like they were getting invaded by a bunch of monsters. "Oh heavens! Where is the order and the knights? Should we evacuate?" "Nonsense. Our soldiers will protect us from any threats." As the metallic objects got closer and closer, the more and more people it had gathered. Many of them were wondering why the soldiers were letting them get this close without doing anything. Everyone held their breaths as the unknown metal army stopped right in front of the gates. The only thing that was heard were quiet breaths and the hum of the truck's engines. Just then, the door opened and a human person walked out towards the guards. "What? It's not a monster. Maybe it's a tamed one. Who are these people anyway?" Many questions arose from the crowd. However, the soldiers refused to answer any of their inquiries and continued to interact with the man that got out of the truck. After some time, an agreement seemed to have been made as the soldiers bowed to the truck driver and began to instruct the crowd to disperse. "Please get out of the streets," they ordered. "The trucks are about to pass through the gates." That single line from the soldier sent gasps and looks of shock from the crowd, including Claudia. She caught on quicker than others, realizing that the metal monsters probably had the approval of the royal family. "Excuse me, not to be rude, but why are they allowed in Metropolis?" "I haven't seen this kind of monster before," asked one person from the crowd. "It is not a monster," the soldier reiterated. "This is a vehicle that is permitted to enter Metropolis premises." Once again, everyone was shocked. This was a vehicle? It was far too big and looked too heavy to be moved by ordinary means. "Does that mean that this vehicle was approved by the royal family?" The soldier nodded. "That is correct." "Huh? I haven't seen this vehicle from the waiting list of approval. I've never seen this before, so it couldn't have been approved so fast." They'd need at least a month of testing in the streets before they're allowed. The one who asked that was a company owner who also had a product pending for inspection. So he knew what he was talking about. This got everything talking to each other, which delayed the entrance of the truck even more. The soldier slammed the bottom of his spear into the ground and demanded everyone's attention. Please do not delay the trucks. These are approved by the Duchess herself. This sent waves of even more shock and disbelief. No wonder it didn't have to be tested in the streets for a month. The Duchess herself gave her seal to the vehicle. Because of this, the truck went from a strange, mysterious, and possibly dangerous vehicle into something that the general public was intensely curious about. What was good about this big vehicle that even got the Duchess approval? Finally, the soldiers were able to guide people off the roads and into the sidewalks. This allowed the trucks to finally enter the gates of Metropolis and start their travel into the streets. The trucks towered over every carriage and spooked the horses into neighing. The mere weight and size of the truck sent small tremors into the ground as it passed through. As the lineup of trucks passed, people could finally see their loads in its entirety. The carriage on the back of the truck was made out of thin wires crossed horizontally and vertically, allowing people to gaze through the holes and see what was inside. And there, they were able to have a glimpse as to the capabilities of the truck. Look, there must be 1,000 kilograms of steel bars in that thing, said one of the guys as he looked at the first truck. It carried only steel bars and nothing else. No way. This thing can carry that much. How is it even moving? It would take at least 20 carriages to transport that much metal. But it only takes one for this vehicle? Chapter 503, Trucks Sending Ripples. Many were in pure disbelief that a vehicle could carry that much. But their surprise didn't end there. What's that I smell? Is that weeding whisper? That's impossible, gasped one of the spectators. One of the trucks carried exotic spices and herbs specifically only found in the King's region. Almost no one from Metropolis even knew what they were. But there were a few from the crowd who were knowledgeable about the spices and therefore were shocked at their appearance. Brother, what's the big deal about some plants? Asked the guy beside him. Weeding whispers can only be found in the King's region, he answered. Once everyone heard this, they muttered amazement underneath their breaths. The fact that this vehicle traveled all the way from the King's region meant that it was durable despite the long distances that it had to travel. However, for the knowledgeable man in the crowd, he didn't think that the people understood just how impressive this feat was. You guys don't understand. Weeding whispers will wilt once it's plucked from the ground within half a month. Yet, the plant here is clearly still in good shape. Those that understood his words gasped at the realization. If the truck contained weeding whispers that were still in proper condition, then that meant that it had traveled all the way from the King's region to here in Metropolis in under half a month. This was unthinkable in their terms. Even the best carriages equipped with the best horses could only go from the King's region to Metropolis in about 3 to 4 months. Of course, rather than thinking that the trucks could travel that fast, most people would rather believe that they were assisted through magical means in order to achieve a time that fast. With a 7-star or 8-star mage helping speed up the travel or delay the spoilage of exotic herbs and spices, then it was more than possible for those trucks to achieve what they had achieved. That was why most people thought that the trucks were possessed by one of the legacies. After all, only they had the money and resources to fund such an extravagant way of transporting items. Do you guys think that there's a mage inside that? I think there's a tamed monster inside that metal thing. That's probably how it's moving despite being so heavy. I wonder who it is. Are they from the Guild of Arcana? I heard that there's a strong mystic arts user from the Alarix Guilder and Company. It could also be from the Quench Company. Bobby's the only one that can create such a magnificent work of metal. The general public made their opinions. A lot of people followed the truck to its destination and found that it landed in an abandoned mansion near the Duchess Castle. There, the trucks made their stop and people began to unload all of their cargo. The Rebornians quietly worked, using their unique skills to easily transfer all the steel beams, fresh ingredients and herbs, and other construction materials needed for their new soda factory. Does anybody know who owns this land? I didn't even know people were in this mansion. I always thought it was abandoned. It only took a few minutes before the trucks fully unloaded all of their cargo. And soon after that, they exited out of the mansion estate and went on their way back to the Metropolis walls. The trucks left just as fast as they arrived. Although these trucks appeared for less than half an hour inside Metropolis, the commotion that they created reverberated through every nook and cranny of the territory. Practically everyone heard of it. Now, this was a place that didn't have social media. Everything spread through word of mouth. Many thought that they were a hoax or a myth that people created to gain attention. However, too many people witnessed the trucks for it to be a lie. Not only that, but the fact that the Duchess herself gave her approval for the truck's entrance meant that the rumors about it were most probably true. The Magic Tower, for instance, were once again in disarray as they discussed how a truck like that would be feasible. Gentlemen, do you think that it's possible for those trucks to be powered by magic? If the rumors about the trucks are true, then they should be. There's no other explanation. How could a vehicle that large and heavy be able to travel from the King's region all the way here in Metropolis? If so, then what kind of magic would be able to do that? The mages and wizards thought in silence as they tried to think up of any known magic spells that could accomplish what the trucks had accomplished. Maybe an object flight spell? It would significantly lower the travel distance since they wouldn't have to go through obstacles. That's just not feasible. They'll need 10 7-star mages casting that spell for a full day to make that happen. The room once again was enveloped in silence. "We have to know how this is possible," said one of the senior wizards. "We'll be able to solve our problems in procuring ingredients for our potions. We'll be able to save a lot of money and possibly even increase our cultivation by more than twice. If they had access to the loading capacity of the trucks, then they'd be able to transfer items from all over the continent to help them with their studies, therefore helping them break through to the next star realm." This was the reason why they were fixated on finding a way to replicate the trucks with magic. However, even with all of their brain power combined, they couldn't find a way to make something as heavy as the truck moving at such fast speeds. It was simply impossible and inefficient. How are they even able to do this? Could there be a new breakthrough in magic that we don't know about? Maybe there's really a tamed monster inside those things to make it move. Just then, the door to their meeting place burst wide open as a mage in a black robe and tilted wizard hat came rushing in. Sir. I was able to find a magician that witnessed the trucks move for himself," said the rookie wizard. Another man in civilian uniform bowed to the officers of the Magic Tower before describing what he saw in the trucks in detail. "Sir, I am sure that there is absolutely no magic involved in those vehicles." His controversial words sent the meeting into an uproar. "That simply cannot be possible. Perhaps you were mistaken. Maybe they were able to use a magic spell to hide the mana coming off." However, to prove his point, the man simply just presented a crystal ball to the wizards. It was completely transparent with no color at all. "I touched the truck myself using this crystal ball. And as you all know, this ball will glow into a different color once it comes into contact with any magic spell, no matter how hidden it is." The ball was indeed transparent, leaving the senior mages and wizards unable to say anything else. Finally, they all turned to the Tower Master. "What do you think, Tower Master?" Chapter 504, Magic Tower's Participation. All this time, the Tower Master had his eyes closed and his lips pursed. He went into this meeting without announcing presence at all, as if he was nothing but the wind. Everyone thought that he was simply concentrating on trying to find a solution for the truck's mystery. But in truth, the Tower Master was afraid. He was afraid that if he opened his eyes, he would see a piece of paper magically transported in his hands. After hearing about this truck, there was a sinking feeling in his heart that this was related to that boy, that genius boy who seemed to have no limit in his talents, that boy that destroyed all common sense regarding the mystic arts. He didn't know why, but he had a premonition that he would soon find out the mystery behind those trucks. "Tower Master?" Each one of his senior wizards looked at him expectantly. Eventually, he knew he had to find out the truth. He opened one eye warily, peeking out into the fray. Then, he looked down at his hands, trembling at the thought that his dear old friend, would once again give him some very timely news about this Michael boy. As he slowly opened his eyes more, he saw his hands completely laid flat on the table. He opened his eyes fully. There was no letter. "Yhey!" he cheered out, surprising everyone in the meeting room. "What is it, Tower Master? Have you figured out what kind of magic they used to power that vehicle?" The Tower Master shook his head. "I don't know," he said jovially. At this point, everyone couldn't help but look at the Tower Master, wondering if he was still right in the head. They knew that mystic masters of the Guild of Arcana were always usually eccentric and weird, but their Tower Master never exhibited this kind of behavior before. "Let's not talk about those vehicles anymore. We don't know how it works and we'll probably never know." And just like what this young man said, it's possible that the machine never used any magic at all, making it useless for us to try and decipher. Hearing those words from their leader, the senior wizards finally decided to leave the topic closed for now and simply revisit it at a later date. "How are we with the Guild of Arcana? Have they replied to us about the appearance of the tourists?" the Tower Master asked, happy to close the discussion on the trucks. "Not yet, Tower Master. They'll probably give us their response in about 3 days or so," replied another wizard. It was at that moment that everyone looked up, feeling the propagation of mana in the skyline of Metropolis. In the glass observatory of the room, they saw a white dove flying down directly to the magic tower, carrying a white letter on its back. "Ah, it looks like they've responded," said the Tower Master, waving his hands and opening one of the windows for the dove to enter inside. The dove circled in the ceiling before eventually touching down in the Tower Master's hand. "Let's see their response," he said, his good mood causing him to hum as he untied the letter from the dove. He quickly tore off the envelope and began to unfold the letter. And as the Tower Master gazed upon the contents of the letter, he suddenly froze in place. This letter wasn't from the Guild of Arcana at all. "Dear friend, hello, it's me again. About the trucks." The Tower Master's hands began trembling as he held the letter in his hands. His expression darkened before he eventually burst out all of his anger like a volcano. "Curse you, Seberus. Why don't you just tell me everything in one letter? Why do you have to make me so anxious?" The Tower Master could almost certainly see the look on Seberus' face as he wrote this letter. The man was having too much fun messing with him. Seberus could have told him everything there was to know about Michael. Yet instead, he made the Tower Master experience the same heart-stopping shock that he experienced himself. And just like he suspected, the genius boy Michael was the one responsible for the trucks. And this time, there wasn't any magic involved in it at all. Still, the fact that a boy could be this mystically gifted while being talented in machinery could be considered way too unfair. Did the goddess play favorites? "Tower Master, is something wrong?" the wizards asked him. He slammed the letter on the table, getting everyone's attention. "We don't have to figure out the secret of the trucks. Even if we had 100 years, we won't be able to solve it." The other wizards expressed their disappointment. They really needed those trucks. "Then what shall we do? We'll just buy them. The trucks will be for sale in the auction on Barnaby's vault." This lit a fire of excitement in everyone's eyes. Acquiring those trucks was now their only priority for this auction. They were even considering just skipping the auction this year round, but after knowing that they could buy the trucks, they were now fully engaged in the idea. "That's great, Tower Master. But if other people know about this, then they'll be fighting for the trucks as well. I'm sure that the word has already been disseminated all around Metropolis about their uses and capabilities. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the entirety of Metropolis would be fighting for those trucks. Its uses were universal, meaning that everyone could stand to benefit by acquiring them for their own company. The trucks could probably triple or quadruple any company's current sales, which meant that they would fight that much harder in the auction to get it. Even if they had to give up everything they had, it would still be worth it. This meant that even a faction as powerful as them would have to fight tooth and nail to obtain it themselves. The Legacies will definitely participate. Alaric will stand to gain so much from getting those automobiles. That's probably the reason why the Duchess approved it herself. She must also be planning on buying it in the auction. The knights will show up. Trucks will revolutionize their way of fighting wars. With the Magic Tower, they were the 6 major factions in Metropolis. It was very likely that one of them would win the trucks in the auction, given their immense power, money, and influence. The Tower Master nodded. We'll have to ask for help from the Guild of Arcana. Send a message to them as soon as possible. The wizards in his command nodded. What shall the message contain? Tell them to send one of the mystic master pupils. Braxton will suffice. The other wizards were surprised. They knew that this was important, but they didn't think it would be this important to even employ a pupil. Are you sure about this, Tower Master? Yes, he nodded. This will be very good for his development. Pupils of mystic masters were very talented. Only the best of the bests were given the chance to become a mystic master in the future. Because of that, most of these pupils tended to be lonely. They were at the peak, meaning they had no one there beside them. But this time it would be different. The Tower Master was excited to see the interaction between Michael and Braxton. Those two would find themselves in common company and allow each other to push themselves to greater heights. Chapter 505. Legacies wanting trucks. The Magic Tower wasn't the only planning on increasing their power to compete in the auction. In the knightly court, just beside the Duchess Palace, squires and knights were in deep training to prepare for the eventual fight in the auction. Their territory had 2 concentric circle architectures. The bigger circle was made for the squires and the knights in training. The whole area of the circle was equally divided into 10 parts, which was equivalent to the 10 ways that a knight could take in their cultivation. Although every way in the knightly court was supposed to be equal, this specific court in Metropolis couldn't help but have one way stronger than the other. And that was none other than the way of the axe. They had the superior number and power than the rest of the ways here in their branch in Metropolis. This was due to one single person, Krueger. He was one of the 10 heavenly knights in the order, meaning he had reached the peak of his cultivation and had no equal in the way of the axe. His mere presence allowed other knights and squires who trained in the axe to become so much better than they were before. His mere presence oozed the essence of the axe. And since he was a heavenly knight, the inner circle of the knightly court was reserved only for him and his personal students. Knock, knock. A knight wearing full metal armor knocked on the door of the most powerful axe user in the world. Sire Krueger. I have got something to report to you, sire.
Come in, answered Krueger.
The knight opened the door and entered the heavenly knight's abode. There, in the corner of the room, he saw him. An orc with his tusks coming out from his lower jaw and twisting back outwards like it was his own personal face mask. His green skin was littered with battle scars that showed the history of how he achieved the title of the best in the world. What is it? Krueger asked, his arms crossed on his chest while looking out the window. It's those vehicles, sire. We were able to find that they are going to be sold in the auction in Barnaby's vault. Krueger pensively looked at the window, towards the court. His mind was running with thoughts of the future. Becoming a heavenly knight was not a title worthy for those who only have bronze. One must have brains to become one as well. He had correctly deduced that the value of these vehicles would cause the entirety of Metropolis to be engaged in an intense auction war. He began to think about the current situation of the knightly court, and tried to estimate if they were capable enough of becoming the eventual winner of the auction. The Legacies will go all out. They stand to gain the most out of all other major factions. Krueger muttered to himself. The Duchess will be a formidable foe, not just inside the auction, but outside. As for the Magic Tower, they'll have to ask for help from the Guild of Arcana. He easily guessed the Tower Master's moves. After all, there was always a certain friendly rivalry between the Order and the Guild of Arcana. If he was thinking about going all out, then the Tower Master must be thinking that as well. Now, although he was a heavenly knight, there were certain prohibitions towards him when it came to things like this. He was far too powerful to participate in the auction. It would be unfair. Still, the importance of the trucks were far too big for him to simply just stay inactive. He knew that he had to move. If not him, then someone that he personally trained. Sire Krueger, your students are asking which one of them you will send in for the auction, the knight asked. Krueger scratched his chin. Tell Potbull to sharpen his axe. This will be a good chance for him to make his sword heart stronger. In Krueger's opinion, Potbull was the perfect man to send for the job. He was one of the most talented axe users that he was teaching, if not the most. The boy may be young, but he was able to keep up with his much older peers very easily. In a few years, Krueger could see Potbull becoming the strongest knight in all of Metropolis besides him. He was trying to hit two birds with one stone. He would stand to have a better chance to get those trucks, and his student would also be able to harden his sword heart and improve much faster than normal. This auction would be a meeting place for geniuses and prodigies alike. He couldn't wait to see what would happen. Because of the unexpected appearance of the trucks, 3 of the strongest people in Metropolis gathered in one place to talk about their plans. They all gathered at a circular table. At the top was Alaric Goldman. His wavy hair up to his shoulders was now balled up into a bun. Because of this, his golden earrings were very visible to Bobby and Aerith, who was sitting opposite him. "Whoa, I can see you weren't prepared for this meeting," Aerith teased. "Who isn't?" Alaric replied. "The auction of this vehicle is important enough to stop my preparations for the parade." Aerith laughed, her pink ponytail hair swinging side to side. "Fufufu. I can take over for that if you'd like." "Me first." Bobby raised his hand. "Joking aside, what are your opinions on the automobile?" Alaric asked. "I think that it is very important that at least one of us will be able to get it." "That I can agree with you," Bobby said. "Being able to transport 1,000 kilograms of steel at a time is very important to my business. As for me, even though my business isn't related to transportation, I will still benefit a lot from having such a large cargo load," Aerith answered. Alaric nodded. "It is important for the 3 of us. That is why I propose that we have another coalition."
A coalition?
"What if I don't want to? I have the proper strength to get it for myself," Bobby said straightforwardly. He wasn't bragging, just stating facts. "Yes, we all have the ability to fight it out for ourselves. But I'd like to remind you all that the other 3 factions are also fighting for these vehicles. The Magic Tower and the Knightly Court are both factions that have a much deeper source of power because of the organization they belong to. And the Duchess, while only having power in Metropolis, is not one that should be taken lightly. It's very much likely that all of them will pull out all the stops in order to get those vehicles. If we fight it out individually, our chances will only be about 16.67%. But if we group up, then our win percentage goes up to 50%. The Duchess, the Magic Tower, and the Knightly Court are already established. They don't need these vehicles. We do. Imagine how much better our golden roads will be through those machines." Chapter 506. Similar backgrounds. Alaric's words got their attention. The golden road was their end goal. It was what their parents, their grandparents, and their family pushed them to achieve. This competition between heirs would ultimately end once a dominant golden road had been established in the royal continent. Alaric, Aerith, and Bobby were already starting to set up their own golden roads. And if they obtained those vehicles, then they could finally graduate from Metropolis and compete at a much bigger stage deeper in the Queen's region. These trucks would be their advantage against the other older and much more established companies further north. "I have already heard news that the Magic Tower contacted the Guild of Arcana, and my men have also seen a lot of activity in the Knightly Court. It seems that Krueger himself was teaching his students this time around. They have their own parent organizations to get support from. We are all on our own. Individually, we might stand a chance against those guys, but together we can secure it." Alaric knew that if the geniuses and prodigies from the Order of the Heavenly Knights and the Guild of Arcana were not something that they could simply disregard. They were absolute monsters that defied common sense. Of course, they weren't too bad themselves, but he had a feeling that if they didn't consolidate their powers now, then those monster geniuses could end up getting away with the automobile decisively. Thankfully for him, though, Bobby and Aerith were smart enough to know that they had to go all out. "That is true," Bobby said, his large, hairy arms leaning on the table as he pondered. "We will be increasing our chances to win by teaming up. But what if we win? Do we share the vehicles? Aerith asked. This was very important, one that could decide whether they agreed on a coalition or not. It's up to you guys. We can either share it for ourselves, or we have our own duels to see who will eventually win the vehicles. Alaric presented them with a choice, and from their expressions it seemed that the answer was simple. Do you even have to ask? Aerith chuckled. We'll have our own competition at the end. Agreed. Bobby nodded. They were all friendly with each other, but that also meant that they were very competitive against each other. There was a triple-way rivalry going on with them that was under the surface. Alaric wanted to continue his reign as the top company in Metropolis. Meanwhile, Aerith and Bobby were trying hard to dethrone him and have Metropolis all to themselves. Of course, all three of them knew this. Their rivalry allowed them to stay sharp and always keep improving. Then we're in agreement? We three are in a coalition for the auction. Correct. Bobby nodded. Only for the vehicles, Aerith mentioned. For the sou, that's a free-for-all. Of course, Alaric agreed. Meanwhile, back in their new headquarters, Michael was just given the news that the trucks had successfully unloaded their cargo onto the abandoned mansion. Lord Michael, Kong has already been sent there to take care of the planning, Shiina reported. According to the engineers, it will only take a day and a half for the construction to finish. Michael nodded in satisfaction. Creating a factory for soda was very easy since they already had a lot of the machineries already set up back in the nation of Reborn. All they had to do was disassemble it, transport it through the truck, and reassemble it back here in Metropolis. And for now, he decided to source his materials locally here in Metropolis. It would be much more costly if he had to transport all the way from the parched lands. Of course, this was all temporary. Once the Golden Road had been connected to Metropolis, Michael planned to source all of his materials from their own territories. A day later, the construction for the factory was finished. He visited the place with Shiina and Castell, touring the entire process from the creation of the glass bottles to the mixing of the soda juice, carbonating it, and putting it in the bottle. Of course, Michael chose the iconic design from his previous world, having a metal cap that made that satisfying pop sound when it was opened. As for the soda itself, he looked no further than the famous Cola. Even if the recipe was a secret back in his previous world, ChatJK4 was able to reverse engineer its process and ingredients perfectly. Now, all I need is the workers. According to his deal with Uncle Max, the Vanderbilt family would be the one to manage and work on the soda factory. Of course, since they were very unfamiliar with how a factory worked, Michael gathered them all and gave them a tour of their new workplace. All 30 Vanderbilts traveled to the new soda factory, and they couldn't help but gasp and be in awe. Even Max, who thought he knew about Michael's capabilities, simply couldn't believe how fast they were able to make the factory. How did you build it already? It hasn't even been 2 days, Max complained. It's something called concrete. I'll explain it to you later. For now, let's move to the factory and my Rebornians can teach you how to work. As they approached, the large factory doors opened and everyone saw the huge machineries that looked completely alien to them. There were these tall box metal containers that spouted hot steam, and there was even a very intimidating large hammer that slammed into a flat anvil and caused tremors in the ground. What is this? Are these metal monsters? Are you a tamer? Michael laughed before gesturing for the Rebornians to start their lessons. Everyone, this is called a boiler. Please take care not to touch it, because it's very hot. The engineers began giving very basic explanations as to how the machines worked and how to operate them. It was very intimidating for the Vanderbilts, but the engineers assured them that they will stay in the factory for a few months to teach the newbies how to operate them. Meanwhile, in a completely dark room shrouded in darkness, there were 2 figures that faced each other. One of them was standing with a prideful and confident stature. Meanwhile, the other one was kneeling to show his respect. The great slime god has told me that he recruited you for your talents, said the shrouded man who was standing. Yes, I am Viperion. Cast away your name and choose for yourself a new one. I was once like you, who was once in the path against the will of the great slime god. But now I have seen the truth. I have seen the light of day. I cast away my old name, Hestu, in order to become the priest. I am leading the people to realize the truth about the Iron Maiden. Hestu and Viperion's backgrounds were very similar. They were once enemies of Michael and the Reborn company. But because of a certain slime's intervention, they changed their ways and was now completely loyal to him. Very well, sir. I shall name myself Bishop. Good Bishop. Now, it is your turn to spread the Iron Maiden religion to Metropolis. The great slime god wills it. I. Chapter 507. Spice Vice. Michael met up with his Uncle Max to discuss more about their soda business. He decided to source all of their ingredients in Metropolis to save money. Now, the problem now was who they were going to get it from. Since his Uncle Max had been in Metropolis for a long time, Michael guessed that he had a lot of connections and sources that could solve this particular problem. I know a lot of companies that can get you the supplies. What kind do you need? To create soda, Michael needed carbonated water for the fizz, sugar to sweeten it up, caffeine to get that certain kick, phosphoric acid to add some bitterness and balance the flavor, and of course some other natural flavors to get that iconic taste of cola. For the glass bottles, Michael just needed glass and metal to create that metal cap. Of course, he knew that some of these ingredients weren't all that well known in this world and Metropolis as a whole. That was why he had ChatJK give him the basic components needed to create those ingredients. I need sugar, first and foremost. Max's face lit up as soon as he heard that. That's great. I know a guy whose company sells a lot of sugar and spices. I was in business with them a couple of years back, when the Vanderbilt business was at its peak. Come on. I'll take you there. Max and Michael traveled through the streets of Metropolis and eventually landed on a different district altogether. Michael noticed that the architecture of most buildings were similar to that of granaries in the countryside. The smell of wheat and spices were very pungent, probably because there were a lot of buildings whose sole purpose was to store herbs and other natural ingredients. This company is called Spice Vice. The owner and I go way back. Knowing him, he'll even give us a discount for the sugar, Max said as he led Michael to a tight alleyway in between a lot of stalls containing mounds and mounds of spices. Despite the tightness of the path, there were a lot of people crowding the stalls. They bargained with the sellers about the price of the spices, threatening to go to another place if they didn't lower the price. This place has a Middle Eastern vibe, Michael thought to himself. The fact that most of the people here had tan skin made it even more familiar. They almost have complete control over this district, Max said with a hint of bragging, as if he was proud of his friend. You must know them. They have a branch in the Upperwood district. Michael did remember that Spice Vice were one of the biggest companies during the festival. He recalled that they were within the top 10 in a list containing the Quench Company and the Pyramidic Cuisine. It's over here, Max said as they finally entered an open place, with the same bustling spice stalls but now wide enough for camel-like creatures carrying baskets of spice to cross the streets. Max led him to a large palace made out of limestone and was walled off from the rest of the district. They approached the entrance with the name Spice Vice chiseled on the archway. It looked like they weren't the only ones visiting this place since there were a lot of people clamoring for the guards to open the gates and hear their plea. Looks like we have to wait in line, Michael muttered. PSSH, Max muttered. Just watch this. Max put two of his fingers into his mouth and whistled a rhythmic high-pitched sound that caught everyone's attention. The guard wearing a loose white tunic at the top of the walls looked down in their direction, squinting. Max waved his hand, laughing. Once the guards caught sight of him, they also smiled and pointed at him as if they were long-lost friends. The crowd parted to make way for the guards as they approached. Brother Max, it's been a long time since you've visited. You've broken my heart, said the guard, hugging Max tightly. Ha ha ha, Max laughed, choosing not to say anything. He didn't want to tell him he couldn't visit because he had no money. Is Vishna around? I'd like to speak with him. The guard nodded. Yes, he's a little bit busy right now dealing with some stuff, but I'm sure he's willing to talk with an old friend. Come. Michael followed Max and the guard closely behind as they were let inside the giant blocky palace made out of limestone. As they ventured in, Max continued to have reunions with his old friends and introduced them to him. They greeted him with the same warmth and camaraderie as Max once they found out that he was his nephew. Eventually, they reached the main room guarded by men wearing loose white clothes and wielding a shield and a spear by their side. Their guide knocked on the door before opening it. "Sir Vishna, Max Vanderbilt is here to see you." Michael looked ahead and saw a middle-aged man who had an olive complexion and a bushy black beard. "Max? I thought you were gone, you bastard." Despite his harsh words, Vishna opened his arms wide and welcomed Max as if he was a brother. "By some miracle, I'm still here," Max said with a smile as he shook hands with Vishna. "What brings you here?" Max gestured for Michael to come closer. "This is my nephew, Michael Vanderbilt. Michael, this is Vishna. Right after I was scammed, he was the one who helped me keep my business afloat." Immediately, Michael's perception of Spice Vice rocketed to the skies. It spoke a lot about a man if he was willing to help another man during his lowest points. And it looked like Vishna was a prime example. "It's really good to see you again, my friend." It was in that moment that the sound of glass breaking echoed through the palace, followed by the sound of what sounded like an elephant screaming to the top of its lungs. Vishna immediately opened his windows and looked down at the streets below. There, everyone saw an elephant with a long tusk standing up on its hind legs as if it was spooked by something. Its owner, the one holding its leash, was trying to get his mount to calm down. But no matter what he did, everything seemed to only scare the elephant even further to the point that it started thrashing its head around, destroying the spice stalls with its giant tusks. The people near the elephant were screaming for help, afraid that they would get trampled by this beast. Everyone was trying to run away from the scene as fast as possible. But this had only caused a stampede in the streets because of the crowd. "This is dangerous," Vishna muttered. "That horned elephant is a 6-star monster that can cause a lot of damage. They are usually very docile, but once they're angry, they can't be stopped." Michael knew that he had to do something. His feet glowed as a magic circle appeared underneath his soles. But just as he was about to move, someone else got there first. They saw a figure jump down from the roofs above, somersaulting in the air before eventually landing perfectly on the elephant's back. Chapter 508, Rising Pride. Michael felt the mana in the air stir because of this person's appearance. His eyes widened once he realized that they were at least a 6-star wizard, judging from how strongly the mana in the air were wrapping themselves up on the figure. The horned elephant, feeling someone on its back, began to thrash even harder. Its stomps began creating reverberations in the ground that caused spices and fruits to roll out of their stalls and into the streets. Still, the figure wearing a fully green tunic and a green scarf over their entire head kept their balance on top of the elephant perfectly. The elephant's body began to glow with a red glint as it readied itself to use one of its strongest attacks. It roared, releasing a shockwave that would have left most people's eardrums broken. But just before it could fully release its power, the hooded figure ran up to the elephant's head and began to slide down towards its trunks, and using their momentum to slam it down towards the ground, stopping its attack. Pawoo! The elephant's tusk began to glow, as its natural magic began to sharpen it even more, enough to rival that of a blacksmith's knife. Anyone who didn't have a strength in the 6-star realm would be sliced into pieces just from a single contact with those tusks. The hooded figure jumped in the air as they dodged from a trunk. But the horned elephant, displaying an intellect above that of a monster, perfectly maneuvered its head to skewer the hooded figure above. Finally, the figure took out 2 scimitars from their back and parried the elephant's tusk. A magic circle appeared on their wrists, supplying the figure with enough power and strength to rival that of the beast. In retaliation, the beast raised its trunk and began to inhale everything in its path. It was like a super-powered vacuum, sucking in everything that the trunk was pointed at. Because of that, the hooded figure felt themselves shooting down towards the elephant like a magnet. The elephant caught the hooded figure before wrapping them into a coil, attempting to crush the stranger who tried to fight it. Seeing this, the crowd gasped and cried out. This brave, hooded stranger tried and failed to save them from the rampaging beast. "Should we go down and help?" Max asked, worried. The beast was a 6-star monster. If they don't help now, then the situation could end up in hundreds of casualties. Michael, who had been observing the fight carefully, noticed something that most people didn't notice. He saw that despite being the elephant's clutches, the hooded figure didn't show any signs of being in pain. They were able to create a defensive spell that allowed them to withstand the crushing force of the elephant's coiled trunk. This is weird. They should have enough power and magic to defeat a beast like this, Michael pondered. The hooded figure had the capacity to defeat the beast by now. Yet they weren't. Just then, he saw a glint near the elephant's mouth. Upon closer inspection, it was a small metal pin that was lodged near the elephant's teeth. This was probably what caused the beast to rampage in the first place. He realized now why the hooded figure wasn't fighting the elephant. They were trying to save it. Finally, the hooded figure burst out with power and forced themselves out of the elephant's coiled trunk. The beast recoiled and screamed out in pain. And it was at that moment that the hooded figure shot forth towards the elephant's mouth and took out the metal pin that gave it pain. As soon as they did that, the elephant stopped in its place, its eyes returning clear with lucidity. The elephant had been neutralized. Vishna began clapping his hands in applause. "Bravo, my daughter!" Finally, the hooded figure took out the green scarf that covered her face, revealing herself to be a young woman of age, only a couple of years older than Michael. She had the same olive skin as Vishna, with her eyes thin and like a viper. As soon as the crowd in the streets saw her face, they began to cheer and shout her name. "It's Reena! She saved us! I knew she could save us, as expected of the rising star. Mom, I want to be like her too." Vishna laughed heartily as he looked down at the people crowding her daughter. "Ha ha ha! As compassionate as always, my daughter. Did you see how she didn't want to hurt the elephant? She could have easily killed it if she wanted to." Max shook his head in disbelief. "That's Reena? She's all grown up now." "That's right," Vishna said proudly. "My little daughter has grown up to be even better than I am. Did you know that she's part of the Rising Six?" This time, Max couldn't help but gasp out loud. "No way, the Rising Six. She's able to reach that height already when she's so young." Michael, clueless, asked Max about what this Rising Six were all about. "What's that?" he asked curiously. The Rising Six is a title that is only reserved for those young talents that have the potential and momentum to become part of the major factions in Metropolis. This didn't give Michael any clarity. He didn't even know that there were major factions in Metropolis. Thankfully, Max saw Michael's confusion and explained. There are 6 major factions. There's the Gildren Company headed by Alaric, the Quench Company owned by Bobby, and the Sinclair's Elixir branch that is managed by Aerith. All 3 of them are called the Legacies, and they are the first part of the major factions. The second part of the major factions consist of organizations like the Guild of Arcana, the Order of the Heavenly Knights, as well as the Duchess Secret Service. The 6 of them consist of the major factions and are the top companies/groups that are located in Metropolis. They are the top dogs, the apex creatures of the marketplace. Below them are the minor factions. They are the companies that are big and successful in Metropolis, but are still below the level of the major factions. These are the companies like Pyramidic Cuisine, Crocodile Leather, and many more. There are a lot of companies in the minor factions, about 20 of them, so I won't list them out right now. But you have to know that Vishna's Spice Vice is one of the top contenders in the minor faction. Of course, many companies wish to break through from the minor factions and ascend to the major factions. Because of this, we have the Rising Six. They are the 6 talents in the younger generation who are said to have the potential to take their company and ascend it to the major factions. Max's surprise and shock about Vishna's daughter was for good reason. There was a good possibility that in the next 10 years, Spice Vice could be thought up in the same conversation as Alaric and the other Legacies. "I am very proud of my daughter, and I'm sure that in the next auction at Barnaby's vault, she'll be able to get what she needs to ascend to the next level." Chapter 509. Sugar Acquired. Vishna peeked out of the window and waved at his daughter. "Vishna, come meet our guests." However, the young woman just looked at her father and shook her head no. "Ah, looks like you won't be able to meet my daughter. She's too busy with her training these days." She says that she has to prepare for the auction or else she'll get left behind by the others. Down below, Reena was being thanked by the horned elephant's owner profusely, to the point of prostrating in the ground. The elephant itself snuggled up its trunks towards her, as if apologizing for what it had done. Reena made sure that the elephant was okay, and that no one was hurt during the incident before leaving the streets. But before she completely left, she looked back at the window where her father was. She recognized the man beside him as Max Vanderbilt. But she didn't recognize the boy that was right next to him. She squinted, trying to observe him more. She didn't know why, but she felt like there was more to this boy than meets the eye. Usually, she'll be able to gauge a person's strength just from their posture alone. But this time, she couldn't correctly estimate him. I'm overthinking this. He's just a kid, she thought, shaking her head. Back in Vishna's room, Max still couldn't believe that the little girl he saw back then had now grown to become one of the best talents in Metropolis. Congratulations, Vishna. Looks like your company is in good hands. Ha ha ha. Damn right it is. Vishna laughed. Brother, my company is going to be up there with the Legacies soon. How about we have a little arrangement, huh? He said, winking. What arrangement? My daughter is already of age. How about we engage your son with my daughter? A union of our families. Vishna laughed, and Max awkwardly laughed with him. Knowing Vishna, the guy was probably joking since he knew that Max's son was only a little kid. Still, Max wouldn't be surprised if Vishna asked again once William was grown up. Let's open up a bottle of snake wine and chat like we used to, huh? Vishna offered. Maybe next time, brother. For now, I'd like to discuss business with you. Business? Of course, for my good friend always, Vishna said, gesturing for them to take a seat in his snake leather couch. I'm here to pay off my debt to you back, Max said. This was also one of the reasons why Max wanted to visit Spicevice. At his lowest, Vishna always loaned him money whenever he needed it, without question. And even now, the man wasn't asking back the money Max owed. And now that the money he lost was returned by the Duchess, he wanted to repay Vishna. My friend, are you sure? I heard that your business hasn't been going well. It's fine if you keep the money for now, Vishna said sincerely. Don't worry. Justice was served. Max told Vishna about their discovery that it was Jack who scammed him out of millions of gold coins. It was that bastard? Vishna harumphed. No wonder we couldn't find him. He was a royal. It's good that your money was returned. Have you finally decided to revive the Vanderbilt business? Max shook his head. This business is different. We're looking to buy your sugar. Vishnu nodded and took out a pouch from one of his cabinets by his desk. We have lots of sugar in our inventory. But as you know, the price for this is very high, especially right now when it's not in season. Michael didn't care about the price. He just needed lots of it. How many sacks are you thinking of getting? Vishnu asked. 2 sacks? 5 sacks. We need about 100 kilograms. Vishnu immediately sat up, knocking over the sugar in the pouch. 100 kilograms. Are you sure about this? Yes, 100 kilograms a week. That seemed to have put Vishnu in a coma. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Because of the price, most of his customers only bought sugar a few grams at most. The only ones who bought kilograms of sugar from him were the big companies like the Pyramidic Cuisine and other food-related businesses. You do realize how much that would cost, right? Michael nodded. Yes. Max had just gotten his money back. But Vishnu didn't think he would spend it all on sugar alone. Are you sure this is the right use for your money? What would you even use sugar for? From what I know, the Vanderbilt business does not dabble in the food industry. Oh, I won't be buying it. This is my nephew's business, Max corrected him. Really? Michael boy? Are you sure you need all that sugar? Michael nodded and used his shadow skill to transport 3 chests full of coins. They landed on Vishnu's carpet with a thud, the sound of heavy coins clinking around. Vishnu couldn't believe that a boy like him had possession of so much money. This was enough to buy tons and tons of sugar. He thought that the Vanderbilt family was struggling to keep up. But if they were willing to give up this much money for sugar, then everyone's perception of the Vanderbilt business was wrong. They weren't on the downfall. I'm planning on making a soda business. It's kind of like an exotic juice, Michael explained. Vishna forced himself to calm down. A juice business? The Duchess has strict policies regarding exotic food. They will need verification that it's safe to consume fist before they allow people to sell them. Don't worry. The royal family already gave us their approval, Michael explained. Vishna felt like he wasn't looking at a kid, but an adult instead. He was much better at business than other adults he had been dealing with. Max, who's your nephew? He's a Vanderbilt that came to Metropolis from the King's region, Max explained. The King's region? And now you're starting a company here in Metropolis? He asked, incredulous. That's right. He was able to get a permit and everything. As soon as he said that, it was as if a light bulb turned on in Vishna's head. Wait, I did hear about a new company getting a permit. What's it called? He asked Michael. Reborn. Vishna's eyes widened. So you were the owner of Reborn? The company that was getting a lot of attention in the festival? I even heard that you won in the low-class tournament. Because a Department of Spice Vice participated in the Upperwood District Festival, Vishna was very familiar with the commotion that the Reborn company caused during that last day. It was legendary, to say the least. He never expected to see that the owner of that company was none other than a Vanderbilt, and a kid at that. Vishna also leaned on the table, realizing that he was facing the real deal. I'm willing to give you all the sugar you'll need, he promised. But it's going to cost more since it'll be hard to transport that much sugar in a week. Michael smiled. We'll have no problem with that. Chapter 510 Vishna's Wish. Once his business with Vishna was sealed, Michael and Max went on their way to the next ingredient needed for the soda business. Meanwhile, Vishna was left all alone in his room, still reeling from the realization at what he had just witnessed. It was at this moment that the door to his room opened and his daughter came in to give her greetings. Father, you asked for me? Reena said, bowing to his father. Unlike her attire from before that hid most of her features, Reena now wore a traditional silk green dress that accentuated her womanly curves. The thin veil wrapped around her head also gave her a sense of mystery and allure. Why didn't you meet with our guests earlier? Vishna asked, disappointed. Your godfather Max Vanderbilt came to visit us after all this time. Reena curtsied. Apologies, father, but I have much more important business to attend to. If I don't prepare for the auction, then my rivals can overtake my place. That can't happen. I shall send a letter to Godfather Max giving him my greetings and apologizing for not meeting with him. Vishna waved his hand. There's no need for that. You'll meet with them soon. Reena looked up at her father, confused. There was a certain smile on his face that she knew meant that he was scheming something. What do you mean, father? I am saying that you will meet the Vanderbilts soon. In the auction, no less. This didn't make sense to Reena. Father, no offense to them, but the Vanderbilts have long lost their stature as part of the Legacies. They have even been relegated out of the minor factions. They do not have the sufficient golden 500 ranking to participate in the auction. Vishna laughed. That was true, but if you had met with them as I did, then you would have realized that their stature would soon change in the coming future. Although Max was her godfather, Reena didn't think that he had the capacity or talent to completely overturn their situation and turn them into a company worthy of joining the auction. I can see what you're thinking, Vishna laughed. But I'm not talking about your godfather. I'm talking about the boy next to him. The image of a golden-haired boy looking down at her flashed in Reena's mind. Him. Yes, him. In my opinion, the boy has the talent to completely change the course of the Vanderbilts in Metropolis. It won't be long before they have the rankings needed to participate in the auction. Reena showed a look of surprise. Her eyes darted around the room as she began to think of the changes that would happen. Her eyes began to clear and turn into indifference soon after she realized that it wouldn't matter to her. I am happy for them, father, but my focus should be on Bo. If I defeat her in this auction, then I'm confident that we'll be able to overcome the pyramidic cuisine in the rankings soon. This is why I do not have much time for anything else other than training, father. Reena turned around and was ready to leave. I wouldn't be so sure about that, daughter. This boy not only has the potential to enter the auction, but also achieve great success in it as well. You may even find yourself on the losing side when confronted with him. This immediately sent a fiery flame of pride in Reena's eyes. She faced her father, almost offended that he would imply that someone else could beat her. Father, have you no trust in your own daughter? The only ones that I have to worry about are the other Rising 6 competitors. But if my preparations go smoothly, then even they are not ready for my performance. Vishna walked over to his daughter and held her cheeks. Of course I trust you, Reena, but I am simply saying that you should not underestimate that boy. From my estimations, he could become part of the Rising 6 in the near future. This truly surprised Vishna. Her father's intuition was rarely wrong. It was what helped Spicevice to become the company that it was now. The fact that he was praising this boy as a near member of the Rising 6 meant that he could very well be part of them in the future. Very well, father. I will keep my guard up against him at all times. Or, dear daughter, you could do the opposite, Vishna emphasized with a wink. Reena stepped back, looking at her father with confusion. What are you saying? The boy is a Vanderbilt. I have a feeling that the latent genes of the great lion eyes has finally reared its head. It won't be long before his roars will be loud enough to cause reverberations in Metropolis. We could either fight the waves or go along with it. Before Michael and Max left, they gave him a sample of the soda they were going to create. He thought that it was magnificent and had the potential to take Metropolis by storm. But that wasn't all. Michael revealed that he was going to take care of the shipping of the sugar through the trucks. Vishna couldn't believe that Michael owned those vehicles that caused everyone to lose their minds. It was at that point that he realized that Michael was a different breed altogether. He wasn't just a talented boy, he was the talent. That was why Vishna wanted him to become his son-in-law. You're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting, Reena recoiled. Take him as your husband, Reena. This will be good for you and our company. This time, Reena finally couldn't take it and stormed out of the room, stomping her feet. She couldn't believe what her own father was suggesting. Think about it, Reena. Her father's voice echoed through the halls, chasing after her. The auction will be a good chance for you to become close with the boy and let him see your beauty. The mere thought angered Reena. First of all, he was just a kid about 13 years old. She was already 18. It was inappropriate for her father to think that they could get engaged. Secondly, Reena resented the thought that she and their company needed the help of the Vanderbilts. Even if they could regain their esteem in the future, that didn't mean that she needed their help. She was going to get Spicevice in the major factions all by herself. She didn't need to get engaged to do that. The very reason why she was working hard to improve her strength in the auction was because she wanted to prove to her father that she could finally take over the business. She thought she got her father's approval once she became part of the Rising 6. But it seemed that that wasn't enough. She balled up her fist, with nothing but rebellion on her mind. She decided that in this auction, she would do her best to prove to her father that she didn't need anyone else to succeed in Metropolis. She was going to defeat this Michael boy and prove to him that she didn't need him or anyone else.